Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Finance and Corporate Services. We only have 2 discussion items, but they are heavier items. But we'll get right into it with the consent items. I will note that for members of committee, item number 5 has been removed from the consent items. So I'm looking for a mover for items moved by Councillor Fernandez. Councillor Gazzola, I have you in the queue. Go ahead.
I queued in because I was going to move them, but that's okay.
Actually, Councillor Gazzola, I will take that you were queued in long before I asked the question, so as moved by Councillor Gazzola.
It's immaterial, but I do want to ask that you pull out items number 3, 4, and 6, as I have questions on them.
Items 3, 4, and 6. Councillor Gazzola is asking to move those out. Those in favor? Yes, 3, 4, and 6, yes. And none are opposed. Councillor Gazzola, go ahead.
I just, on number 3, there's a number of changes to do with the parking at the Kitchener Market. I'm just wondering what the impact of all of this does and what's the impact on our operations. Is there somebody?
We don't have names set up here just yet. Mr. Reedman? Oh, sorry, Mr. Bloom.
Through the chair, from a purely financial standpoint at the Charles and Benton Garage, the daily liability is about $150 that we would stand to lose if we didn't attract any new additional customers. So our presumption is, by attracting at least 50 additional customers every Saturday, we'll be close to a break-even point. So it's not a significant amount of risk on a Saturday.
Well, you're doing a lot of things, and is that what you're trying to? You're getting 50 additional customers. I didn't. You're getting into agreements to do with people that vendors that come there and their employees and all of that. What impact does that have? I'm not clear. You're getting into private agreements with another parking operation. Is that other parking operation empty on a Saturday?
So through the chair, really the intention here is finding options for our vendors and their staff to park in locations other than underneath the Kitchener Market. So our goal here is to provide them with 2 options at least. So one was within the Charles and Benton Garage, to which we can control the rates that they would pay, and the other is a closer option, which is at Market Square. At Market Square would simply be, negotiating on their behalf to try to find a rate that they believe is acceptable. All of the costs would be borne by the vendors who use that parking. We're simply the facilitator of those discussions.
Okay, and I guess where I was going with this is it possible to work out something with the other market or with the other parking operation to assist people going to the market, and rather than having to have them. If they can't find parking there, to find it somewhere more convenient at a reduced price, rather than having to go all the way down to Benton Street. You're looking after the vendors and the staff, and I just wondered about our customers. Are we concerned about them also?
So through the chair, we have those conversations regularly, but we will certainly have those again, especially with Europro, as they own the biggest garage closest to the market.
Okay, I understand that it's sometimes quite empty, so it would be a win for everybody. So that's my item on 3. Okay.
Okay, just hold off 1 second. I have Councillor Yaneski and Councillors Marsh in the queue. Are they on item number 3? Okay. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I can just add a little more context as the councillor that represents the area where the market sits in, is that we have seen a lot of concern on the part of the vendors that their customers don't have sufficient spots in the underground parking garage at the market itself to park. And what has come to light is that a lot of the people who are employed by the vendors park there. And so this is a solution that will ultimately provide free parking spots on site to a lot more people who will be coming to shop at the market. And that's the goal. It's not just looking after the vendors and the vendor staff. It is ultimately looking at the customers as well. So I also just wanted to ask that we make sure that we are flexible in our motion rather than tying staff to these exact rates that are in the first part of the motion. I'd like to see us give staff the authorization to come up with a rate that is agreeable to all parties, because I don't think that we're there yet, and that the hours also might need to shift a tiny bit in conversation with the market manager. I just like to, that's what I learned, and so I'd like to see us perhaps amend the wording in a way that reflects that.
Okay, if you don't mind, Councillor Marsh, just before we do that, I would look to staff, because I don't think we can pass a motion that says like around $2, for example. I think we do need to be a bit more specific. So, Mr. Bloom, is there a concern about timing, or would you have any alternate wordings that you would suggest?
Through the chair, I mean, perhaps what I would just suggest is you remove the $2 and $3 number and just say a flat rate at, so essentially directs us to establish a flat rate, and you leave it to our discretion to determine what the appropriate flat rate ought to be as one option. Okay.
I will come back to you, Councillor Marsh, for the specifics on how you'd like to handle that. Councillor Yaneski, is it on this item? The market? Okay. Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, just further to the same questioning, if you're going to go with this $2 and $3 rate, but the parking at the Benton Street is all automated in terms of you use a credit card, whatever, how would you have a person working there to collect this money, or how would that take place?
Through the chair, certainly for the vendors and their staff, that would be facilitated through our team at the market. So those vendors would be given, there's a special card that the Parking Enterprise develops, so they would have that card, and that card enables them to get in and out, and then it charges their account, and then we bill them monthly. For customers, there's really two different ways that we can approach it, and we haven't determined which is the ultimate way. One could be through an OTR system, which requires the customer to go to the market, visit the market desk, and receive basically a coupon that gives them the $2 flat rate. That's not the best customer service approach, but it's certainly one that helps kind of manage the scale of the cost. The alternative is just we set a flat rate at the machine for customers, and those customers, you know, if they're in before 7 and they're out before 2, it just shows up as a $2 charge at the pay machine. So either of those options are what we're considering.
So just for clarification, so if the customer goes to the market, does some shopping, then you go to the customer service to get a ticket that would, so basically come back and go back to the parking garage and slip it in, and so they get free parking.
$2 parking, sorry, $2 flat rate parking.
Oh, for $2. So they have to pay at the market clerk, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
No, through the chair. Which converts their charge from whatever the charge would be to just a flat $2 rate. So that one, in that case, what it means is it's really just the market customers that would be using the $2 flat rate, but it does present some logistical challenges for customers. It's not the easiest thing to remember to get your $2 voucher every Saturday. So that's what we're weighing as to how we would actually roll this out.
So how many customers, or I'm not sure whether you can calculate this or not, but if you go to the farmer's market and you try to get there, and I've done that several times, and you can't, parking becomes an issue. It's usually the number one issue. And so you say, well, forget this. I'm going up to St. Jacobs Farmers Market because it's all free there, and do that. How many customers would you lose? Because, I mean, it's busy up at St. Jacobs. In Kitchener, it's, you're limited in terms of space.
Through the chair, again, it's near impossible to calculate that today because it's really about lost opportunity. How many people drive by, can't get into the garage, and leave because they don't know that there's a more convenient option elsewhere, or who don't go at all because they simply don't want to deal with that friction. The goal of this would be, the number of times that garage is closed becomes reduced significantly. And for those that don't even want to deal with that aspect, they have an alternative at Charles and Benton if they're willing to pay $2 for the convenience of and they're okay with the 3-block walk. That's really what we're trying to do here, is create a far better customer service experience for the customers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Etherington on this? Oh, okay, go ahead, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say I'd be delighted to see anything done to relieve the parking issues around and at the market. I know of a number of people who on bad weather days want to drive to the market who do not go to the market. They change their mind because they dread the parking situation, which is an absolute zoo some Saturdays. So whatever can be done, I support Councillor Marsh's comments. Whatever can be done there to improve that situation, I'd be fully supportive.
Okay, and Councillor Gazzola again on this, or are you queuing in for the next item? Councillor Gazzola. On this item again, or on the next item? Yeah, I have it queued in.
I want to comment, and I'm not sure what's coming up here. What kind of a recommendation are we getting? I want to comment on whatever that is.
Yeah, I think Councillor Marsh what she's looking for is some more flexibility. I might add this might be an opportune time to take advantage of how we deal with these again at council, and if there's, rather than figuring it out on the fly, if there's more specific recommendations, perhaps something could come back at council, but okay, if you have something prepared. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay. Okay.
I have a quick question on the floor if you want to get that out of the way while we're waiting.
Yeah, I think we'll just finish up this item.
So all I want to do is not tie staff to the precise rates that are in the first clause. And so I just would like to strike the first clause that starts with that council in an effort, etc., but keep the rest that's the third, fourth, the second, third, and fourth clause. So this is what I would propose to replace the first clause: that council, in an effort to alleviate parking challenges at the Kitchener Market, direct staff to implement flat rate options for customers and vendor staff to be able to park at the Charles Benton garage on market days. We're missing the word garage, but yeah.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to support. You know what? Can we not leave this go the process it's going? I'm not prepared to just give a carte blanche, approval to staff to work something out. This council should ratify whatever goes into place. We're making big bucks here as councillors. We need to make some decisions.
Okay, and there's other people queuing in here. So, I would tend to agree. At this, without any specifics, I would say rather than vote against it, Councillor Marsh, I think we should maybe have further discussion.
All right, then let's do this. If council wants to be able to vote on the precise amounts, I'm hoping that staff can smooth out the wrinkles and come up with the way forward that they want to go to in the next week to come to council with any changes as required. Is that possible?
Certainly has, and Councillor Marsh, is your prerogative as well to work with staff and bring forward recommendation at council. That's within our purview.
Sure.
Okay.
I just don't know that we'll have the time to work out the wrinkles, but we'll.
Perhaps not, but we would certainly have more time than we have right now, I guess, is the...
Okay.
Okay. So we'll consider that withdrawn. Councillor Yaneski, if that's withdrawn, are you still wanting to speak on this item?
Just withdrawing this?
Yes.
I sort of want to comment on it.
It's been withdrawn, Councillor Yaneski. Commenting on it is out of order at this time? Okay. Okay.
I still want to add a comment.
A comment on this in general? Certainly. Councillor Yaneski.
Well, seeing that this is now being withdrawn, I was going to sort of somehow support and look for that, but I think, the customer and the vendors are struggling in this market, and I think the only way to address it, and since there's limited areas in the parking garage itself, in the market parking area, and then, of course, in Benton Charles, there's more room, although it's a little bit of a walk. If you're going to have them go to Charles Benton, I think you got to give them free parking. If you want the vendors and the customers to be there, free parking is the way it should be going. I'm not sure what the impact would be dollar-wise to the city, but, normal person would say, well, it's kind of difficult here, I'm going to go up to St. Jacobs. It's free parking there.
Okay, Councilor Gazzola, again on this, or item 4? Number 3? Okay, and Councilor Marsh on this, or? Okay, for sure, Councilor Marsh.
I think we need to be clear that the message is not that our market is struggling and everybody's going to head to St. Jacobs. I think the message needs to be very abundantly clear. The market is booming. It is, we are doing so well that our parking garage is full consistently throughout the whole market day, and we need to alleviate the parking concerns because we have so many people coming to the market. And we do have room for more. There's always room for more at the Kitchener Market, so I just want to make sure that we understand that's our message.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ioannidis on this? On item number 3? Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Davey, I just wanted to add comment as well to this. I've been to the market several times and I've seen Councillor Marsh there, and it is incredibly difficult to find parking. And I'm glad that staff have brought this forward to alleviate this. And I'm not too sure about whether we can offer free parking, because I don't know if that is create some issues, or because I know our own staff have to pay for parking, but I'm glad we're looking at this.
Yeah, and I just echo that very briefly. I think, again, this is more an issue of the market being too popular, clearly. And again, staff's found an interim small-scale solution that's actually supposed to add, in their words, a nominal increase in the revenue to our parking enterprise in the market, so it's a good solution. And I look forward to solutions coming forward. Obviously, I can't comment on anything further than that because you don't have any further information in front of us. But it's a consent item because this is a quick win. We'll move on to item number 4, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I just want to ask staff, we're having problems with the operator here, and we're putting a number of conditions in for this operator. I'd just like to know what happens if any of these conditions are not lived up to. Do we have to, can we at that point remove the license, or do we have to wait till the license comes up for renewal again? What happens in this case? We've got all the rules in there, but we're not saying what happens if
Ms.
we
Flactu?
don't follow the rules.
Yeah, Ms. Flactu?
Through you, Chair, if the owner-operator of this business was to be in contravention of any of these conditions, I would be coming back to Council with a report requesting that the license be revoked or suspended, or additional conditions be placed on it.
Okay, so it can be revoked throughout the year. We don't have to wait till it comes up for renewal.
Through you, Chair, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Udesky on this item? Go ahead.
Well, just further to this questioning by Councillor Gazzola in the response, when you look at the report, there are 12 complaints over a period of, looks like 18 months. Well, if we are going to follow the suggestion, then how many complaints are we going to go through before you come back to council? The first complaint, or are you going to go through another dozen?
Through you, Chair, as soon as they receive, if they're not maintaining the level of noise on the first complaint or get a provincial offence notice, their first offence, we'll come back to council with that recommendation.
Okay, appreciate it. What kind of noise issues are there? Is it music, or is it rowdyism on the plaza, or what?
Through you, Chair, they have DJs at this location, and it's loud music.
DJs and what?
DJs playing music, and it's the loud music and the bass.
Oh, so it's like an indoor or outdoors?
It's an indoor space.
And they've been warned already 12 times?
That's correct.
And still they don't do anything about it?
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Zola on item number 6.
Yeah, I have a request to make on item number 6. It deals with environmental committee recommendations for community grants. I would like to, the grants have been awarded according to the committee, and there's still $5,000 left over, which is being put away to provide funding for 2019. There's an organization that has applied, that is in the ward that I represent, Trinity Village, are trying to, it's a work of volunteers trying to improve a berm that over the years, due to the acidity in the air from traffic and all that, all the planting has died, and they want to replace the planting. They've had received some assistance from other public operations. They have put in a bid to our new placement grants, and they were turned down there, and here they're being turned down also. Now, to me, it fits in exactly with what the environmental committee is trying to get done. Looking at the requirements, the criteria, I don't see where they don't fit in. Their request is for $3,000. Another reason that this is it's really a facility that a lot of people come to visit, because there are people that are there in a hospital situation. There's a great deal of activity from the entire community. We can't get a bus stop, but we'll leave that one for another day. But what they're trying to do is to try to improve the quality of the air. I guess they could be coming back to council or someone and ask for barrier walls to be put up along, as they have in other parts of the expressway and the highway. But what they're asking, all volunteers that either live at the community or come to visit friends and family at the community, are trying to replace the landscaping in the berm, and that's all they're asking. And they asked for $3,000. The total cost is much higher than that, and a good deal of the costs are going to be looked after by volunteer digging and shoveling. So I would like to move that of the $5,000 that's left over unused, couldn't be allocated, that $3,000 of it be allocated to that request.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, before you cue out, the challenge that committee is going to face is that and I appreciate that you're bringing it forward, and obviously you're very knowledgeable about it, but that grant was not attached to a report, like the application or anything like that, so we're completely unaware of the merits of it, perhaps why it was declined. I would suggest probably at this point it might be more prudent for you to make that request of staff, and then we consider it an appeal.
Well, that's fine. This has to come back to council next week. I'll deal with it whatever way that's best for council.
Did staff want to comment on that at this point? Oh.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Okay, please.
Carrie Musselman, a representative with the Environmental Committee. It is ultimately Council's decision on approving the recommendation. Subcommittee of the Environmental Committee did meet and reviewed all the applications that were submitted. They felt that this particular application didn't quite meet the intent due to the fact that it does have a site plan on it, and the landscaping is required as part of that site plan. And they felt that the process to revitalize that would be better with working with staff in our urban design environmental area, and then they could come back if they need to. But they really felt it was more of a planning application requirement than an environmental project. And it didn't wholeheartedly meet the requirements. And again, I say it is a recommendation that the subcommittee put forth to the Environmental Committee.
Okay, thank you. If you could just hold there for just one second. Councillor Gazzola, it's your prerogative. Would you like to move the motion, or would you like to bring it back?
I'm just trying to build off of our new neighborhood policy, Live Thy Hood or something, where we're making things easier for neighborhoods. And it sounds to me like we're making it quite a bit tougher here. So I'll do whatever. I want to get it on the floor. I would ask that council support my request. What I need to do to get it on the floor. If I can't do it today, I'll bring it back next Monday if we need something like that. So.
Okay.
I'm at your.
Yeah, see, what I ideally, and I can't move any motions from chair, but ideally what I'd like to happen is I'd like to see the motion tabled, but then also deferred so that we can get more information. Councillor Fernandez?
I just wanted to clear a conflict on voting on this because my parents live at this facility.
Okay, noted. The conflict's been noted, Councillor Fernandez. So Councillor Gazzola has moved the motion. Not seeing anyone else in the queue. So we'll take that, and that's that $3,000.
That I moved the motion for everything else plus the 3,000.
Plus the 3,000. Okay, and actually, sir, I'm not going to take that just yet. I do have one question on this item as well, and that is I'm a bit of a, I don't know, process type person, and I guess I'm a little confused looking through the grants at the Busking for Change grant. And I'm sure it's a great initiative, but I guess I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding from the brief that we got how it does any of the, promote environmental stewardship, environmental awareness, any of the criteria that the grant is supposed to be going towards. Could I get a little more clarification on that? Sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. The applicant has advised that they'll be working with our event staff and there'll be promotional material in our downtown area. The funds will be directed towards our local nonprofits, so the texting of donations will be identified on the board or material that the number and information of the nonprofit will, and whatever ounce material the event staff would like them to have. So it's very new, it's very different. This text to donate has been used in churches to donate funds that way. It hasn't really been used, as far as I know, in this particular area for this particular use. So it is going to be a trial, but it could be very forward-thinking in the way that our nonprofits are going to be getting some additional funding.
Yes, pardon me. I understand. Back to the question, though, I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything yet that how it relates to the actual environmental committee mandate of the environment. That's where I'm a little unclear. Like, it seems like a great grant for something else. I just don't understand how it ties into the environment. Pardon me, I locked you out again there. Okay, go ahead.
To you, Mr. Chair. It's almost a third-party relationship, so the actual helping the environment will be the nonprofits that get the donations. So this particular group won't receive, or isn't in its nature to actually be doing the environmental work. The money that they collect will go to the groups that are doing the environmental work. For instance, REAP Green Solutions has been identified as a recipient, and they were looking for others that may be interested in receiving the money.
Okay, that helps clarify. You have to forgive me, because upon reading it, it was not clear at all how this should be remotely environmental, but that does help clarify. Okay, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Chair Davey. Just wondering if we could split up the motion with the amendment, the addition.
Yes, so what I'm going to do is we're going to take votes on everything but item number 6, because I haven't heard that those need to be broken out. So let's just do that now. Items 1, 2, and 4, those in favor? Oh, recorded vote on 4. Okay, so we'll deal with item number 4 on its own, and recorded vote's been called for that one. Item number 4, recorded vote. Those in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. We will now take a vote on items 1, 2, and 3. Those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Item number 6, we will now take into 2 parts. We'll take the first part will be Councillor Gazzola's addition. We'll vote on that first, the amendment. I just want to be clear, in a vacuum, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to support Councillor Gazzola's amendment, but I want to be clear, I reserve the right when I would like staff to follow up with some information on the grant, reserve the right to possibly change my mind when it comes to council time, because I don't want to see it killed at this point until I have more information. Okay, so on Councillor Gazzola's amendment, those in favor? I see hands, 1, 2, 3, 4. So no hands over here. Those opposed? 2, 4. The motion, I think, is tied. Let's see. I guess I need to see this again. Those in favor. 1, 2, 3, and myself is Councillor Fernandez cannot. So there's okay, and those opposed. Okay, the motion is tied, which counts as a failure. No, Councillor Marsh, you were in favor. Okay, 1, 2. Oh, it fails. Pardon me, because Councillor Fernandez is out. So we have. So, one more time, hands high in the air. It failed. Those in favor of Councillor Gazzola's amendment, hands high. 1, 2, 3, 4. And opposed would be 5 then. Okay, motion fails. Councillor Gazzola can be brought back at council, obviously. It's not final. And the balance of the items in number 6, those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Okay, consent items, not so consenty today. Into discussion items, we're going to be dealing with the Film, Music, and Interactive Media Office. We do have 2 delegations for this, and as well as a staff presentation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the staff presentation first, but we're going to hold off on questions of staff until we hear from all of the delegates as well, okay? So Ms. DiDonato, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Davey. Today we're excited to present a recommendation to launch the Film, Music and Interactive Media Office through Economic Development. I'll give a very short overview, basically outlining why it's an important initiative at this time to lead, and then following with some information about the kind of services and results that we can expect. A rationale to start this today and now is where the global trends meet our local strengths. Content now is actually, mass consumption is focused on digital consumption, mostly by streaming. Everything about it has been disrupted, the way it's created, and all 3 of these areas share this in common. Our local strengths of talent being created here at each of the post-secondary institutions is expanding each year to include more and more content creation. And we have the technology sector to leverage, especially the interactive media, to connect all of these dots and set in a very entrepreneurial culture. This creates the kind of synergy that we hope can benefit the entire economy and create a vital place for people to enjoy the arts further. To give an example of some of the things that we've tested, this is a view of Bell 5 TV. We recently had an event that Bell 5 had asked about for their community programming piece. 40 filmmakers showed up, and many of them pitched their ideas to the extent that we had some who won funding towards a series streaming video. And in fact, it gets to be played across Canada through 5TV, and the creators can then take it later on. They own everything. You can shop it to Netflix or any other place in the future. Imagine if we had these kinds of opportunities on a regular basis. The goal for this office then is to create focus. Now, another piece of the rationale of why these three together is in the numbers. We have a total of 60,000 jobs in Ontario, 3.8 billion plus, and these estimates are bound to be incomplete. The data comes from the Ontario Media Development Corporation, but as you can see, it's getting increasingly difficult to measure as we shift various screen technology. In this case, we're only counting 1.7 billion towards television. In fact, we know that there is content desired globally to that's become the most desired factor across all of the platforms like Netflix. So then the purpose is to focus, to provide focused services that support industry growth, that grow opportunities for film, music, and interactive media. The timing is ideal now, and we are hoping at some point to be able to guide the programs that we do with advisory groups. Thought this was an interesting, unique example of how technology locally is exported to the world beyond what we see Netflix and streaming. These are some images of the Mayo armband in use through, I think, in London and other places where the research into extending the motions of musicians towards the music performance itself and towards using it for mapping those motions as part of games. This has been an area of focus for Thalmic Labs as well. And what happens is the experimentation goes beyond right through to prosthetics for musicians themselves. Another example locally is with the University of Waterloo Games Institute and together with Conestoga College, a lot of content creation. Here we see a recent workshop learning everything about developing games. In fact, this is a cross-disciplinary institute where it goes beyond software development and engineering towards the creation through arts. In fact, locally, you can see some of the smaller interactive media companies as well as larger gaming companies with representation from Electronic Arts. Here you can see you can go ahead and be part of the pre-beta testing for this newest game that's going to be developed locally in partnership with Kitchener and Charlottetown PEI, and you can actually play the Star Wars Rise to Power and let them know what you think about the game. Some of the services that we would offer to all three would be in common, some specific, but in this case, industry development to facilitate entrepreneurial services. They feel that the idea of providing startup services and support can make all the difference towards moving from the individual practitioner towards larger scale businesses. We also know that if we collaborate regionally, and we have done so over the past few years, to make sure that we can maximize what resources we do have and certainly focus on the strengths for each community. And that's an important time for Kitchener to take the lead on that, since a lot of this activity is centered around our city. And finally, we would be looking at, in the first place, a pretty good industry census. All communities are struggling with measuring this, even across Ontario, because it's such a rapidly changing industry. We did take some time a few years ago to do a bit of a census, and we'd like to expand on that now to find out exactly what we have so that we can have metrics for success. Another example, how we've tested the model. This is from a workshop about the music industry. We've had a couple just in the last couple of years, but many over a number of years. In this case, in collaboration with the Small Business Centre, to find out more about how you monetize music online in a streaming environment and how things have changed in all of these industries, from mass distribution to independent distribution, and how to make sure you can monetize that fully. There's an area of law, in fact, with intellectual property, and the idea that blockchain technology now can map exactly who gets which portion of the streaming revenue from each video and each piece of music in a game, and that will be locked into the data so that fair play and revenue can be mapped from the beginning to the end of that use, no matter where it appears online. So some of the results we expect to see, that we'd be able to quantify industry growth in the first place, we'd be able to understand our long-term potential, and further, fine-tune a model for collaboration. On the ground, we expect to see local artists flourish. We really do think that it's going to make a difference to strengthen not only the individual sectors, but other sectors too. There's some evidence from the Martin Prosperity Institute, for example, that when you strengthen these art sectors, particularly in content creation, you actually end up with a more vibrant manufacturing and production in the community, that all of that creativity is connected. It's an opportunity to raise our international profile and national profile with the talent we have. And finally, it contributes towards an inspiring city because we're making room for artists to thrive here. There are a lot of other models from cities, and I'm just going to flash through them quickly. I know they're in the report, but we have examples of cities like Seattle. All of them seem to start with their own strengths and then add to it later. So in the case of Film and Music Office in Seattle, they've added interactive, as has Vancouver. And of course, we have, kind of an industry standard of filming in location, on locations in Cambridge, that's really making a difference towards the film community. We have Hamilton thriving as well with the Music and Film Office there. Services similar in Toronto, in London. And finally, a screen for the Ontario Media Development Corporation, which represents a source of funding for this sector, as well as training, workshops, and all kinds of data, with a focus, as you can tell by the labels at the top of that screen, with a focus on exactly these sectors that we're talking about growing today. We have a bit of a logo soup here of all the folks we've worked with over the last number of years, and we've done another round of consultation in the last couple of months to meet with our partners at all these institutions, including our municipal partners, as well as the educational partners and groups like the Small Business Center and the Waterloo Economic Development. And I guess with that, we're ready to move to our delegations or questions.
We are, thank you very much. So we will get into delegations. We have two. The first is Erica Robinson from the UW Games Institute.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Erica Robinson. I'm also known locally as Gata Jane from my film work. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm here to speak to you as a creator who's chosen Waterloo as her home, and also on behalf of the Games Institute at the University of Waterloo, where I am responsible for strategic partnerships, specifically for our virtual reality project. So what we're doing at the Games Institute is creating a multi-year interdisciplinary research project. And my role with that project has been to travel around and get basically everybody who we can talk to in virtual reality being those things where you put the headsets on and you're entirely encased in a different space. Augmented reality, which is similar except you see through the space into the real world, so it's layered on top, and any immersive form. So in the last year, I've been to Cannes Film Festival, I've been to New York, I've developed partnerships with the Advanced Imaging Society, which reports to Disney and Paramount, and I believe Paramount, various AMD, all of the major studios in LA, and their job is to deploy VR to the entertainment industry. So with groups like that, who are nonprofits working in the industry, to CFC Media Lab, which is well known in Toronto for its work in new media, digital media, virtual reality, and augmented reality, with Phi Center, which is a leading exhibitor in Montreal, and with producers in France and in the States and in Canada. And I tell you all of this because in these conversations, what I have learned is that it's an emerging discipline, and we know that. We know it's a disrupted industry, but I think that we cannot underestimate locally the potential that we have now to claim space. And we have it's this unique opportunity where technology comes together with arts. And technology is something we already do really, really well. And arts is something we already have a lot of talent in. Duncan is over there. You probably know his Kitchener Sync project. We have a lot of artists that are doing wonderful things, and we have technology. And new media is this space that we can bring those together effectively. So I want to say that not only is this an opportunity for us as a city, as a region, to support the arts, to do something that will help develop our local culture, it's also an opportunity to take advantage of a changing industry and to position ourselves using our strengths that are already there, our strengths in tech, our strength in developing technologies, our strengths in developing new platforms and things to put on that platform, and to move that into content creation. So to engage our artists in something that's going to use our strengths. And this proposal, I think, is a key step towards doing that. At the Games Institute, we fully support this. We see this as an opportunity for the city to give us somebody to talk with and work with and link all of the network, all of the links that I'm going out and making worldwide, from South Africa to France to the States to Spain. And we'd like to bring those and make those really usable throughout the creative and technology community here. And so I would basically like to say that this is a great project, a great opportunity, and I hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. No questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thanks, Ms. Robinson.
Okay.
Okay, and next we have Aaron Francis from ACAC.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am here to speak in support of the establishment of this office. A bit about myself: I am from a deeply musical family, a Juno Award-winning family and Juno nominee family, and we're local. I'm Kitchener born and raised. And as well, speaking others in my family, but for myself, I too have been a music entrepreneur for over a decade, and so I can speak somewhat to the challenges that one faces as a music entrepreneur, working in this sector, music specifically, not only connecting locally, but also projecting oneself and one's work and or the work of those that you represent, but projecting them regionally, nationally. So that is where sort of my support's coming from, my experience in that regard. And then just to speak a little bit on my experience as a media and arts administrator, I've served on a number of different boards related to not-for-profit arts, the Empty Space Theatre for 3 years. Most recently, I've been appointed to CAFCA as a member of the board, and as you note, I also sit with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee here for the city. And I will just say that when it comes to municipal arts policy, municipalities are really well placed to support arts creation. And I think, and I genuinely believe this, none so much so as the city of Kitchener. In my own example, I once attended recently, not within the last 2 years, a City of Kitchener sponsored forum where arts creatives and technology creatives went to the same space. It was at 44 Gaukel, and during that forum, I was able to interact with the CEO of a local technology company, and that initiated a series of conversations. It went from that forum to coffees, to collaborative projects, and now this individual and I still in touch. We find ourselves being in a great position to ask, okay, now what next? What can we do next? How does someone with a video game expertise interact with someone with a music industry expertise? So we're having that conversation, but that conversation is also taking place in many different capacities throughout the region. And so I do believe that the City of Kitchener is also well positioned to ask themselves, okay, what next? And I think that this is what should be next. If anyone had any questions.
Thank you very kindly. There is one question. Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. What genre of music are you in?
Well, when you come from the musical background that I do, we don't like to subscribe to genres. And it's very difficult to try to ascribe R&B, rhythm and blues for music, for a musician. we don't subscribe to disciplines and genres in that regard. And I think that's what this speaks to, the forthcoming and current interactivity, cross-disciplinarity that's taking place already before our very eyes. And when it comes to content, I don't think we should start, and with respect to your question, thank you for it. But when we're talking about content and moving forward, it has many faces, but it's very multidisciplinary.
Okay, appreciate that. Now, you said you also performed in the area too?
I haven't performed since 4/20/2007, personally. So no, I have not recently performed in the area. I help facilitate events, music performance opportunities. The last event I did was in collaboration with Greenlight Arts at the Conrad Center around the corner. It was a music podcast, if you will, live performances. We had dancers from UW come down. I opened up the floor to a local artist. We had a local art perform exhibit, and it all took place at Conrad, one night only. So that was my last event.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, there are no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Francis, Ms. Robinson, for coming in today. I appreciate it. Okay, so those are our delegations in this item. We will now go into questions of staff. Councillor Ioannidis?
Yeah, just when the time's appropriate, I'll move the recommendation.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the city to move forward in supporting the film, music, and interactive media disciplines. I want to just ask staff, when we hire for the lead on this office, I'm just wondering if you can describe, I mean, we can't find somebody who's going to be an expert in all of these fields. So can you please help me understand how one person who might have expertise in at least one of these areas might be able to support all three?
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, I would guess, Councillor Marsh, that you're probably correct that likely the successful candidate will be stronger in one of the three areas or has a much bigger background in all three areas. I think what we would be looking for from a candidate on top of that, is somebody who's a great community builder, a great facilitator, someone who has a history of, for example, being able to connect and build a relationship with the OMDC to secure funding, or somebody who has a good understanding of basic business practices so that they can apply those sort of fundamental business development skills, across the board in all three areas. But more than likely, they will have a technical background in one of the three.
And will there be any consideration towards having some sort of advisory board set up to support the individual who, I'm sorry if I missed that in the report, but to support the individual who will be leading this charge?
Ms. DiDonato?
Through the chair, yes, we are planning to gather some advisory group together just to give some direction in that way, and we've already had quite a few people express interest in that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think this is a unique initiative, and it's far-reaching. I think, Sylvia, both you and Corey, you had met with myself, and I think Councillor Davey was present in the meeting, and when you first expressed the idea, it seemed like, wasn't really sure. Personally, felt like we were throwing spaghetti on a wall and hoping something would stick. But from that conversation, I think we have focused. And that's the takeaway from the presentation, that it will provide focus to support industry growth. Some things, there's a lot of positivity spoken here of what the go-to steps are. What helps to see is if you don't do this, what will happen? Sometimes that helps us to better make that decision. Where are we in the marketplace when it comes to content creation, be it media design, music, and film? Where are we now? And which direction would we end up? Can this area germane already in a positive direction, or no? We will stumble. What's the staff's position on that?
Through the chair, we certainly have a great community of very talented artists, very talented artistic entrepreneurs. What we do here, and media today and content today is both, there's a creative side, and there's also a technological side. And what we hear is, this region is well positioned on the technology side. We don't yet have the depth and the scale that we need on the creative side for local companies to be able to, for example, secure contracts on both the technological side and the creative side. They can almost always get the technological side. Unfortunately, at times, the creative content work gets farmed to, say, Montreal or Vancouver, which has a deeper threshold. So I think the risk of us doing nothing is we don't grow that creative content side, but through this focus, the goal would be to, over time, create greater depth and opportunities on the content creation side. And similar to that, I think the biggest risk, you've seen, and I think you may have seen the note that was provided by a representative from Conestoga College. All of our academic partners are creating and graduating talent in these fields. Our challenge really is to make sure that there is opportunity for them to work here and not simply get a degree here, a diploma here, and then simply go to Toronto or Vancouver because that's where the jobs are. So I think for us, the lack of doing nothing means, difficult to address those two fundamental challenges.
So because of the vastness of a lot of momentum that's here in the region, be in tech, and we do have a strong, arts community, sometimes the stumbling block in my mind ends up being when you try to do too much. Will we deter from that and really focus on key deliverables for that 2-year trial project where staff can come back to council and be like, this is what we got done, this was the added benefit to the community?
Through the chair, yes. If I can answer it simply, yes. And I think we try to be pretty clear on, goal number one is clear and quantifiable industry growth, and that is probably about as simple as I can say. That is the mandate of this office, and within 2 years, we would want to make sure that we have seen that and we have a firm understanding of the potential of this region.
So the Office of Film, Music, Interactive Media, it's a long title. I don't know if that's work in progress. It's my opinion anyways. What type of interaction will be with Communitech and what's happening out of that space?
Through the chair, we've had some conversations with local organizations who expressed interest in collaborating, because when they come forward for support through Communitech, they may also be actually looking for funding and entrepreneurial support in actual content creation. So those partnerships are already starting, and we would expect them to continue.
One last question. One of the biggest things that kind of attracts me to this, overall I'm supportive already, is the access to or assistance with getting additional dollars from other orders of government, as well as the Ontario Media and Design Corporation. How much money is out there? Do we know that yet?
Well, I could through the chair, I could find out the quantifiable amount, but we do know that the federal government is investing more in content and making connections there. In terms of the Ontario Media Development Corporation, I think we have some room to grow. There's access to funding that requires applicants to reach a certain business threshold, and we feel this office is going to be able to get people to that next level, qualify for higher orders of funding. So
we want to have a lot of positivity and enthusiasm for this endeavor. And one thing that will be able to help achieve that, in my mind anyways, and this is coming to council meeting, if staff can provide that information of how much money is out there towards those grants, if you have this information already, what have you been already being successful in the community and the arts community in accessing, and what's that in between that we will endeavor to achieve in that 2-year span, but very positive with whatever I see forward.
Thank you, Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Can you tell me if this has any relation to the Arts Hub proposal?
Through the chair, the Arts Hub proposal is focused on space, and for that reason it includes all segments of the creative community, and the notion that this particular office is more along the lines of what the disciplines are, and that is for film, music, and interactive media. But that's not to say that there isn't an overlap with use of space for those activities as well.
And so where are we planning on locating this office?
Through the chair, the office will be located with the City of Kitchener and could be to start off with here in this building, or potentially, if we were able to, we could even consider locating with 44 Gaukel.
So you've mentioned 44 Gaukel, and in the report you talk about the collaboration between Conestoga College and other entities. My understanding is that the program at Conestoga College was not very successful, and they're no longer there. Is that correct?
Through the chair, they're no longer a main tenant as part of 44 Gaukel, but as expressed through the chair of the School of Media and Design, they have increased their programming at Conestoga College proper, and there are more and more students available for placements that could potentially help out in this area and also help to develop future jobs for those students. So they're very active in the field, even if they're not specifically in that.
They're active at the college, but not at 44 Gaukel.
Through the chair, not specifically as a tenant, no.
Okay. So as I'm looking through the report, and I see on page 7-6, proposed services and deliverables, you've got industry development collaboration policies, but there is no wording here whatsoever that talks about how that's going to be done. How are we going to be facilitating collaboration? How are we going to be maximizing regional strengths? How are we going to be developing industry census? So, I mean, all of these proposed services and these proposed statements are very lovely, but we're talking about spending $260,000 of taxpayer dollars, but we don't have a business plan, and we don't have an understanding of how these are going to be happening. Can we have some understanding of both of those, please?
Through the chair, we could provide further detail on those. The testing that we've done so far is that the events and workshops and programming that is specific to those industries through an advisory group will be well defined in a business plan to ensure that it's well matched with what the needs of the community are at this point.
So you're indicating that we're going to be doing events and workshops for the industry that would be free to them to attend?
Through the chair, depending on partnerships with the Small Business Center and other entities, some events are free. We don't have a specific plan for those at this time. There'll also be specific tasks aligned with each of the different areas.
So as I'm listening to you respond, I guess I'm not quite sure. We've got so many other agencies doing some of this. I mean, Fresh Ground, the KPL, Greenland Arts I just heard about, Neruda Arts, Registry Theatre, to name just a few of our theaters and our, I'm sure if I was to dig even deeper, there must be some private media that's doing, multimedia film that's doing some of this work in this region. Why are we not partnering with them instead of starting something completely new?
Through the chair, I might interject just on your previous question. I mean, ultimately what this funding provides is a full-time staff person, boots on the ground, so to speak, who is out working with the industry, working with all these partners to advance industry growth. To provide, I mean, we've listed sort of 9 of the types of services that person would provide, but it's very similar to what we do in business development every day, which is somebody who's out there helping and supporting entrepreneurs in whatever way that looks. In some cases, that's providing direct service and direct support, and in some cases, it's facilitating or arranging access to programs and services that they need to advance their business. So ultimately, what I would suggest, the output of this is a dedicated person on the ground for 2 years to really advance many of these aspects.
So we're going to be hiring somebody to the tune of $dollars. Out of the $260,000 that we're going to be putting aside out of our Economic Development Reserve Fund. Is there, I guess I'm just puzzled because we're going to be hearing about a safe injection site funded by the region, but we have a partnership, we have a stakeholder in those kind of situations that I think are way more serious I'm puzzled as to how is this going to help our average citizen? How is this going to help? It's very industry specific, and I don't know that I'm convinced.
Councillor Perez, we're still in question
I don't want to go into
period,
comments.
not
I have
comment.
comments. I will come back. I have more questions.
Okay, very good. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Thank you for this report. It's clear from the report that there's some great economic benefits, there's job creation benefits, there's great artist, community support, and growth potential. Can you speak to what this would mean to the vibrancy of our city with content being created here? It would have a great opportunity to be performed and displayed. So for the vibrancy benefits of our city, could you maybe speak a little bit to that?
Ms. DiDonato?
Through the chair, our expectation is that we create an environment for the artists who are here to thrive and shine a light on what they're doing. In fact, there's so many performances that are integrated with technology and media. This kind of activity actually creates an environment where artists stay and thrive, and therefore the cultural experiences come with it. Similar to the performing that happens with the theater sector that mixes with technology, there's similar things are happening with music and film, and in fact, overlapping with the gaming industry today, it's actually more lucrative to score music for games than it is to score music for film. And we are so well positioned here to make that connection and take advantage of our own local strengths for that kind of opportunity for our local artists.
Okay, thanks. I'll have some comments, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Thank you. Throughout this whole report, there's one line attributed to any kind of costs involved. There's a mirror line that talks about $260,000 required. There's no detail as to what it's for, where it goes, where it comes from. Was this discussed recently when we approved our budget not too long ago?
It was part of the budget process. I believe it was actually the 2016 budget. It was the previous one to this that it was approved notionally, and I believe it is identified in the report that it's coming from the Economic Development Reserve.
Let's set that aside. Is there any other additional information we should be having? Like we have so many urgencies that I keep hearing about. We're going to talk about one in the next session, but is this our number one priority?
Through the chair, it certainly was identified as a key priority within the Make It Kitchener strategy. So I would, what the community stands to benefit from this is an industry, a global industry that is growing, and the Netflix of the world are investing billions of dollars and looking all over the world for content as just one singular example. And what that brings with it is job growth, company growth. And I think the risk of us doing nothing is we will miss out on that growth if we don't begin to evolve our community. So for us, we see it as a really significant growing industry globally, and this is a priority for us to try to make headway.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Councillor Gazzola, just as an aside, I always get uncomfortable when members of council ask staff about priority, because it's our job to choose our priorities, not staff's, right? And
I don't remember it as being one of our highest priorities. Okay, on the bottom of page 7.6 and 7.7, on top of 7.7, you talk about a number of partners that we're working with. Have any of those partners brought forward any funding to assist in this? Or is all the funding coming from the City of Kitchener?
Ms. DiDonato?
Through the chair, we've had lots of conversations about in-kind contributions at this point. In terms of cash, that's not been confirmed so far.
Okay, what is the Ontario Media Development Corporation?
The Ontario Media and Development Corporation, through the chair, is an arm's-length organization at the provincial level that makes funding available to businesses who are involved in precisely these fields. They also manage tax incentives for various sectors such as film, and they also manage Interactive Ontario, which provides workshops and we've occasionally had the opportunity to bring that kind of training here. The response for the Ontario Media Development Corporation is one that shows that there is potential to grow the actual funding that could come here as a result of this focused activity.
Okay, looking at their website, and I read their mission and all, to me it seems to me that they're the one that should be carrying out this type of study. And they have a much smoother funnel to senior governments in getting government grants. Why aren't they the ones that are doing this aspect as opposed to us here locally doing it?
Through the chair, what I would suggest is we've seen cities like Toronto, Hamilton, and London develop these offices for the sole purpose that the OMDC doesn't necessarily go searching for this. They're kind of wait and come to. And what those three cities have done a really good job about is helping their entrepreneurs connect with the OMDC to access funding and make sure they maximize the amount of funding that flows essentially from the OMDC into their community. Because short of that resource, individual entrepreneurs are essentially on their own to deal with the OMDC, and in all three of those cities they've seen success in increasing the amount of funding flowing to their community.
Have we received any funding from OMDC?
Through the chair, the municipalities are not typically eligible for the funding.
Okay, my final question, on page 7.7, there's a paragraph that talks about a conclusion here. And to me, it doesn't read. It talks about the risk, and then it doesn't really say what the risk is. It just, can you read that? Tell me what that says.
Through the chair, I think just to reiterate maybe a previous comment that I had is that the risk of doing nothing is that we continue, our community continues to see what we see today, which is an exodus of talent to other communities and a loss of opportunity for future growth within these industries is essentially what was described in that risk.
Is that what that paragraph says?
Yes, so certainly if you're the risk of not taking leadership at a time when this industry growing means we may miss out on our community and our business community capitalizing on those opportunities.
Thank you.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you to Mr. Bloom. Corey, in this report, we've got very bare bones finances. My question to you is, when this comes back to council on Monday, could you please fill in some of the gaps that you've been questioned about? You have my support for this, but I think we need more financial detail. The kind of thing that was requested by Councillor Singh. We need to know what we could potentially gain from other levels of government, other agencies, by making this $260,000 investment. That's all I would ask. Can you do that?
Through the chair, we can certainly describe better what the $260,000 would fund, and if we can also do some justice to what are the funding opportunities out there, or what could this leverage, if I'm hearing the question right, is what could we potentially leverage from this work over the next 2 years?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Benovich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you to staff for bringing this report forward. It's one that I know many of us were hoping would be here for some time, so I'm glad to finally see it. Wondering if you can talk a little bit about the importance of these initiatives and growing this particular sector in terms of our talent attraction capabilities in general.
in the broader tech and innovation sector, because they're quite intertwined, I believe, and I'm not sure if this is more a question for Sylvia or for Corey.
Through the chair, the content creation industry is growing worldwide. The local strengths that we have in the technology would only be enhanced by this. In fact, it's likely that working together, we're actually future-proofing our economy. We know that with artificial intelligence and automation, that more and more jobs that we consider in the future will end up being things that people create, content that is created. The way that that will attract talent in the future means that we will have the vibrancy and the creative economy that will be necessary to draw talent from every other industry and also to make it the kind of place where people will want to live. And the arts are definitely proven to be an important aspect of that.
Okay, next question I have has to do with City of London. There was a time where we were sort of, I think, leading the City of London in this whole area a few years ago, and we kind of slowed things down for a bit because we weren't moving forward with the office, and they have moved forward with their office. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you know of is happening down there, and how that may have led to them also becoming host to the Juno Awards next year.
Through the chair, the City of London Office for Music Industry Development has, over the last couple of years, raised their profile nationally. They become active in the Canadian Music City Summit. They obviously have succeeded in attracting the Junos, and we are collaborating, in fact, since we're fairly close in geography, for the Country Music Awards. I think there's a program where we're collaborating with them, but they've managed to take the lead in offering industry resources through their website, programs, workshops, performing opportunities, showcases at Canadian Music Week. So just with the focus on music, they've taken the industry up a few notches for their city.
So in fact, in some respects, we actually have fallen behind a little bit and need to play some catch-up by the sounds of it.
And through the chair, I think maybe the difference is, we've been trying to advance this off the side of a desk, so to speak. They put a full-fledged resource and some dedicated purpose and passion to it, and you can see how far they've been able to move their ball in the few years that they've had that office, where we haven't had that ability.
So if I understand this report correctly, that's sort of what you're trying to do with this, and in the process also look at how we build partnerships regionally, so that perhaps we can collectively move this forward, because as I understand it, we've done some stuff. I think of Murdoch Mysteries, Melissa Etheridge video, Heroes Reborn, Dan Vermeer, but Cambridge has done a fair bit as well, and Waterloo has done some. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, the advantages we have with collaboration is that each community has their specific strengths, and we'll be able to leverage those, highlight them, and by taking the leadership role, having a situation where the whole community benefits.
Okay, great. Those are all the questions I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions before we go into the second round. I note that the funding for this is coming out of a capital account. Is there a possibility, or has staff deliberated the possibility, that at the end of this 2-year pilot, one of the outcomes might be that it is pushed up to a more tri-city regional type of solution?
Through the chair, that's certainly our hope and intention, and that would be one of the mandates of this office, is to facilitate those conversations to see if that is an outcome. And we've had those conversations over the past number of months, I think, in all municipalities, certainly Cambridge and Waterloo. I think their expression to us was they need time to understand what the opportunity is, and if the opportunity is there and they believe it's worth their investment, and then 2 years from now they may be prepared to, they'll certainly at least be better prepared to decide if they're supportive or not.
Okay. And from the time that I first heard about this idea to where we are now, that it has got considerably more focused, which I appreciate, but still, I think everyone would say that it's still covering such a broad area for such a small office. I guess my concern is sometimes government will push for sort of the jack of all trades, master of none. Is there going to be flexibility as we move forward if there is a greater capability in, say, one of the three areas or two of the three areas? I guess my question is, do you need that direction from committee to say, this is the intention, but the real intention is to come back to those deliverables, even if it's only in a handful of the sectors?
Through the chair, I believe I would hope that we have that discretion. What we've learned from other communities who try to do everything and be in every sector, they advanced very little in all sectors, and a lot of it will come depending on who the successful person is that we put into this role. But certainly their mandate is to grow industry, and if the best way of them to do that is in one specific industry as opposed to across all three, then that would certainly be the direction that we would provide for them. But obviously, and figure out ways to support the other two in other ways, but to make sure that we capitalize on, that the key number one objective is growth.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. So you referred earlier on to, you did another round of consultations. Can you tell us how much that cost?
Through the chair, their past consultations?
You said that you did another round of consultations recently.
Through the chair, that was staff time and meetings across the various organizations, representative boards, and staff.
But there's still a cost to staff time. How many hours did we spend on that?
Through the chair, I couldn't go back and estimate how many hours we spent actually in meetings and preparing for meetings, but it was all towards the culmination of the work that went into this report.
Okay. So how will we quantify the success of this office? Either through dollars, through, if this full-time staff person is able to successfully bring film to our community, or a new business, how will we quantify that so that our average citizen can understand the benefit of having an office and where that money is going, that successful profit is going to go?
Through the chair, similar metrics to other organizations, where in the first instance, once we've started the delivery, that we would definitely tabulate the touch points and the participation, the number of people in industries who benefit from the work. And also we are looking at ways to take a census so that we can do a before and after snapshot of how the industry is doing before and after this intervention with the office activities that take place.
So a number of risks were identified in numerous points in the report. You talk about all of the changes, the constant changes in the film and music and interactive media, but isn't the biggest risk here is that this office may not be able to be successful in attracting the interest or the business that you're talking about? After 2 years, if we had spent this money and nothing really has happened, I hearken back to the Prosperity Council and the arts. It escapes me all of it. The creative enterprise. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that.
Through the chair, I would suggest, we're confident that this role will make a difference, but that's why it's a 2-year pilot. We will be back in 2 years, and we will report on whether this was a success or not, and whether we see moving forward. This is something that taxpayers stand to benefit from should we continue the investment.
Okay. So the success that you're seeing, the outcomes on page 7-7, clear and quantifiable local industry growth, a firm understanding of the long-term regional growth potential, and collaboration model amongst regional partners. Again, these are more statements of hope or proposed deliverables, but I don't see any quantifiable dollars and cents here that could say, okay, at the end of 2 years, we expect that we will see this film industry located here, we will see these musicians successfully producing we'll have this kind of interactive media. We have to have more than public funds going into this. we need the private industry to buy into this, and I don't think it should be taxpayers' dollar that's just funding this. So help me understand further.
Through the chair, the expectation is that the small investment towards any one piece of it, for example, entrepreneurial services, will send folks away with the kinds of skills that will feed the private sector. So this would be, rather than direct investment in the creation, it will be an investment in the skills needed to take their practice or their business to the next level, qualifying for higher orders of funding, such as the OMDC.
Okay, I'll have comments after.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just from some of the other questions that have been asked, I see this as an idea, right, a starting point. And sometimes we're talking about collaboration and how others, if they're on board or if they're contributing to this idea, but in some cases, an idea is not enough. You got to see an action taking place, and I'm guessing that's what the 2-year phase would be. So my question to staff will be, in definitive terms, as we, during the 2-year trial period, will the approach be to continue to collaborate with the various partners that are outlined in this report, but more specifically with the Region of Waterloo, City of Cambridge, and City of Waterloo, so that we can have a firm, hopefully work towards a firm commitment at the end of that 2-year period, where you can come back and say, look, we got a City of Cambridge is willing to commit to this, City of Waterloo willing to commit to this, us and perhaps private sector dollars as well. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of high goals in this, and I hope even if we achieve some of them, it will be a success. But to truly achieve all of it, this idea and this office will have to broaden. And that can't be done, I think, just with the Kitchener taxpayers alone. It would have to be a collaborative effort. Is that the approach that will be taken?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. And certainly at the end of the 2 years, we would have a firmer understanding of what each municipality or potential stakeholder, what their contribution might be. For Cambridge, for example, they may say, we just need to be a partner because we're already investing heavily in film, whereas another municipality may be willing to co-fund some of the office. But at the very least, at the end of the 2 years, we would know from each of those organizations what kind of a commitment they'd be willing to make.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions. If anyone has, I don't have any further questions either. If anyone has comments, you could queue in now. Councillor Marsh.
I just want to add my 2 cents regarding the need for this office. I think we need to make sure that in Kitchener, if we want to maximize opportunities to grow our local talent in these industries, we need to take the lead. A 2-year pilot is going to be an effective amount of time to be able to put us in a better place to assess how best to collaborate going forward with our other partners that we already have identified, but there will be additional ones that will be identified throughout that 2 years. I feel strongly that we cannot be so prescriptive as to define outcomes that might identify specific artists or organizations. I think it's important that we provide this individual who will lead the office the latitude to capitalize on opportunities that come up as it happens, and to move quickly to apply for funding that comes up, etc. That might not even be in existence yet. The goalposts change all the time, and we need to get on board so that we can attract and retain the talent that we know is already in Kitchener, but also that will come to Kitchener if we provide the right context for them to flourish.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The way I see this is too often sometimes we hear as a municipality our focus ends up being too much towards the tech sector, and there's others that support our economy, and I guess this is that balance that the questions that get asked, this is helping provide that balance and in ensuring that all sectors of economy are being supported in music and film and design is an important sector of our economy, and hopefully with this effort will become a predominant sector of our economy. And further to that, and I'm glad that we have the next item here as well, because we have some regional people. Because any way you look at this, this is a regional initiative. What happens out of this office will support the citizens of Cambridge, Waterloo, and the townships, and of course the city of Kitchener. I don't think there's any borders that will be outlined that others that don't live in the city of Kitchener can't come for access. Content creation is cross-border effort. Supporting our overall economy is, of course, a regional initiative. So that's why in my earlier question I had asked that hopefully the endeavor will be to ensure that we have collaboration from the other municipalities in the region of Waterloo, because without their support, ultimate success of this will be, I think, it will be limited. And I think we're putting a lot of hope on this, that not only will this help to support our economy, but as others have said, this is about bringing enthusiasm and vibrancy in a community. Whenever you have any type of artistic content creation, it's a great place to live, and this office will help to support that, and as well supporting the overall economy and assisting our already thriving tech sector. So I think we have to take some risk to ensure that we strengthen what we already have working for us. There is a risk attached to this, but I think that we need to take some confidence in our staff that are have put a lot of effort, and I'm sure will continue to update us on the deliverables. And if I'm around this horseshoe in a few years, that's exactly what I would be asking. I'm encouraging other members of council to hold staff to account that a lot was promised, but we need to see what will be delivered in the end of the 2-year trial period. But for now, what's before us, I think we have to take a certain aspect of risk and support this, and hoping that we will achieve what's in this report.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I'm really encouraged by some of the comments I'm hearing. I was very encouraged by our delegations. It's clear that there is a lot of potential out there, and we in Kitchener and the region are in a great position to take advantage of it and grow it. We've heard that there's a generation of disruptiveness and change, and we've shown in this area that we can adapt early and we can grow to meet new demands. I think we've got great post-secondary institutions that can feed into this industry. It'll be a great two-way street for Laurier, for U of W, for Conestoga College. There is a risk to this, but I think there's a greater risk of not taking the risk and moving forward with this. Mayor Vivanovic touched on it in his comments about London, how their establishment of a music office has got them the Juno Awards. There's great festivals and events, the Canadian Country Music Awards, Canadian Music Week. These are things that could be here if we are willing to take the risk and get started on this. We have got a great chance to grow the creative side of the film, music, and interactive media. We can take the lead on this. I think our investment will be very much like Communitech and leverage more. It's a great place to be in right now, and I look forward to supporting this and seeing the fruits of this investment.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. So it's lovely to see the enthusiasm and the excitement for something that is innovative, and we all want more film industry and more music and more events. When I asked the question about the Arts Hub, I heard that yes, there will be an overlap. So why didn't we start there? Why didn't we just carry on with what we were already doing? We have numerous groups in this community that are doing some of this, not all of it, but some of it. So they have expertise. So why are we not partnering with them instead of hiring our own person? And I'm not sure what we're going to be paying them, but we've got $260,000 set aside. I'm sure that's not just for a staff person. I'm sure that's for other things. I don't see a business case here. And until I understand that what that investment is going to reap us. And yes, there's ancillary benefits, and yes, we may be able to, beat out London on what they're doing. But is that what we're here for? Are we here to see if we can beat out London, or if we can beat out what's happening in other cities? I think what we have to remember, and it's not lost on me, that the next item is about our safe injection site. Maybe we should have talked about our safe injection site first, because that is what is the crux of the concerns in this community. Our homeless people, many of us attended the mayor's dinner on Saturday night, and we heard over and over and over again the great, fantastic work that the Working Centre is doing, but they're always running short too. So this is a wonderful and amazing and incredible idea, but is this what we should be doing? We need community centres. Ward 5 is missing a community centre. Councillor Etherington needs one that has to be built, expanded. I have one that has yet to be expanded. I know that's not economic development, but isn't it economic development when we have people coming to our community centres, spending money, creating programming, creating opportunities for our youth, for our families to grow and live and play in our community? So we're going to set aside, and this was one of the concerns I had when we talked about the whole Make It Kitchener. It was at that time very ambiguous. There was not a lot of detail, and I know that there were lots of questions and there was lots of enthusiasm at that time about the whole concept of Make It Kitchener, Make It Spark, Make It Grow. We had lots of wonderful, catchy phrases. But we have to be concerned about our everyday citizens here. That's what I'm here for. The wonderful, exciting, and innovative things that are happening are going to happen organically. I really, truly believe that, and they are happening. I had a wonderful meeting with Mr. Klugman, and I've got to learn a lot more about what Communitech is doing. Let's let them grow some of this. They've got the feet on the ground. They've got the funding partnerships that are happening. Maybe that's where this should be housed and grown from there. Cambridge and Waterloo are reluctant to jump in until the 2-year pilot project is completed. That says something to me. It really does. We can't be everything to everybody, but we do have to be what is really needed in this community, and that is to make sure that we provide safe, affordable housing, that we have parks and community centres and good streets and good sidewalks for the people who have challenges and are marginalized in this community. The other things will come.
Thank you. Mayor Rabinovich.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Davey, and it's been interesting listening to the comments of my colleagues on council on this issue. And some of them, I have to be honest, actually most of them I'm not surprised of, on both sides of the argument. I think it's, when we talk about what's the role of a council, well, the role of a council is not any single one thing. It's not just to build roads. It's not just to open community centers. It's not just to do economic development. It's not just to deliver water service. It's a whole variety of things. And city councils, whether it's ours or any other council across this country, have a responsibility to find a balance between the various issues that they're dealing with, the circumstances that their community is dealing with, and set their community on a positive track for future success. And I'd like to suggest to this council that, collectively, we have done a good job of that. We have set this community onto a good path for both current and future success. But it also means that we can't take our foot off the gas pedal, because the reality is that there are many other communities who are looking to make investments, who are looking to get ahead of us, to be that community, with the better job opportunities, with the better quality of life. And if we want to ensure that for our residents, all of our residents, then we need to explore different options that we're looking at. You know, sometimes the comment is made, well, you know, we need to think about all of our citizens. Well, to me, the musicians in our community are part of all of our citizens. To me, the filmmaker in our community is part of all of our citizens. To me, the young player that's part of the Kitchener Rangers, hoping to maybe make it to the NHL one day, is part of all of our citizens, just as much as the factory worker at Beamer Box, or the person working at Google, or the person working at Sun Life or Manulife in our community. And so I think it's key for us to continue to look at areas where, as a community, we have been underperforming. And this is one where we have been underperforming, and where there are significant opportunities to grow the industry, to provide opportunities for our young people, so that our musicians aren't having to move to other communities to pursue their craft, where our artists aren't having to move to other communities to pursue their craft. And so I think this is a wise investment. You know, it's in some ways a bit ironic that in the middle of this debate, actually, an email came in from Music Ontario. And Music Ontario and Music Canada are the provincial and national organizations that are responsible for promoting music in Ontario and in our country. And so what it actually talks about is how Music Ontario is partnering with other partners and the London Music Office around a summit to encourage young people, and bringing in mentors from places like the Ontario Institute of Audio Recording Technology, from Fanshawe College, from various recording companies and entertainment companies, from Music Canada, from record companies, from SOCAN, to grow an awareness amongst young people so that they can go and build careers in these fields for themselves. So I am pleased that this is here. I will support this, and I would hope that the majority of council support this, so it can go forward, and we can build on a pilot and build on future collaborations with our neighboring communities.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola.
You know, we really shouldn't be reading our emails when we're in such a heavy debate here. I just want to start out by, I'm going to be making some comments, and they're going to see just another old white-haired guy. But I just want to make a point that I was the first person in the city of Kitchener to have their own personal computer many, many years ago. I was a visionary, but then I've changed. I have there's a big philosophical difference between myself and many members of council here, and that deals with job creation. I have not seen, to me, that is not a prime mandate of local councils. We just do not have the tax basis to be able to get into that kind of business. That's something that we have to leave up to our senior levels of government, and perhaps our own region, which is a senior level of government. We have to unfortunately deal with more mundane situations which are our mandate, such as roads and parks and sewers, stuff like that. That's unfortunately where we have to, those are our prime mandates. We have a proposal here. There is limited detailed financial information on this. $260,000, $250,000. Yet we have other projects earlier today for a $3,000 project. We needed all kinds of information for a $3,000 project. But here, $260,000, no detail whatsoever. My biggest problem is that it could be a great thing. Yes, it could be a great thing if that was our top priority. We have so many other priorities on the plate that we have to deal with. We've heard so much about our aging infrastructure. Well, where is that now? We have an aging population. What are we doing about that? We have a growing population that's bringing us a lot of good things, but a lot of issues, just such as what we're going to talk about next. So these are issues that we have to deal with. And so, therefore, I cannot, at this time, support this project that is coming to us. Really, speaking, I've heard question of, how do you measure success on this? And we were told that success, the taxpayers stand to benefit from this. Well, I fail to see that at this point. We've heard, somewhere I read, where some 1,800 people took part in discussions on this in the past couple of years or so, but that's out of a population of over 500,000 people. It's very appropriate, on the other hand, now that this is coming before us in this year, this is an election year. And this is an opportunity that probably we'll be hearing from a lot more than 1,800 people as we go forward. And it'll be interesting to hear what the people think about it. And in this particular year, they have a real say on it. So, unfortunately, at this time, I cannot support the proposal that's in front of me. And when we come to the vote, I'd ask that we have a...
Very good. Pardon me, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add than a lot of my colleagues that have been in support of this, but I think it's important that we invest in this pilot project. Again, we come back to the fact that it's a pilot project, and if it doesn't end up working, then we have our ability to get out of it. We're not set in stone. But it comes to, we talk about how do we measure success. Well, we all know that if we have one major event come here, that will give the $260,000 back to our community tenfold. We know that any major concert that we have or anything like that, it reaps millions of dollars to drive our local economy through our hotels, through our restaurants, and those are our citizens. We need to continue to drive our local economy, and this has the potential to reap many benefits in our community. And so I believe that we do have a mandate, and part of my platform when I run is to work on economic development and job creation, and I think this is one of the things that we can do to try and assist that. Arts and culture has been underfunded a lot in our community, and I think we need to continue to support it and help it thrive. I think we're getting there. We've had our culture plans 1 and 2 out there for many, many years, and we haven't tackled many of the projects on there. And so I think we need to continue to work on this. Not only is it $260,000 that we get to invest into our community, I think we really will see and reap the rewards, and we'll see that within the two-year time frame that this mandate is.
Thank you. Councillor Yudesky.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been interesting listening to all the comments around the horseshoe, both pro and against this particular project. And it's one of those that it's a dilemma to some degree in terms of which way do you go. I mean, it's a nice to have. Is it a want? I'm not sure, but it is nice to have. Yet we have issues that we have to deal with, which will be the next topic on the agenda. We also have infrastructure that's been pointed out that needs to be addressed. And, maybe money should be given to those priorities. And, but on the other hand, I also think about the arts industry that we have here in the community. We have the Center in the Square. We support them. We support the KW Symphony. We support the Grand River Choir. There's those groups as well as all smaller groups that are around that always are looking for handouts as well. I'm a musician as well. I'm also in radio, so I can appreciate the arts industry needs of trying to go forward. I also got to consider what the taxpayers got to take into consideration of making sure that the roads and the snow plowing and the parks and everything else gets addressed, because that really is our mandate. So I'm in a dilemma here as to which way to proceed. I see this as a 2-year project that could be supported, and it may lead to something of fruition. It's nice to have arts programs in the community, because even though you are a worker here and provide work in the industry, whether it's school teaching, working in government, or working in private business, or wherever, you still need to somehow enjoy your life and go to the arts and enjoy them as well. And we do have a lot of arts in the area, from a variety of festivities and concerts that we have to just local musicians getting together on a veranda in a local neighborhood. So I still think arts are important. I've always enjoyed music all my career, and and I like to see it move forward. And I know that this is more of an expansion from film and industry as well. So there's other opportunities that all tie in together. So I will make my decision when I vote.
Thank you. I'll make my comments, and then I'll go back to Councillor Anitis for his who moved the motion. There's certainly an element of risk here. What does concern me a bit in the discussion is the idea of priority and mandate. I haven't heard anyone, and nor do I think anyone for one moment, thinks that this has a higher priority, for example, than the item we're going to deal with next. I haven't heard anyone say this is a higher priority than our roads or our pipes or anything else. This is simply one item in a list of priorities that we have going down a list that we're looking at doing at this time. So I don't think there's really anything to be gained by pitting one against the other, because until I hear that we're going to be deferring something in our capital forecast as a result of this, I don't think it's a fair point to make. Having said that, I've heard directly from businesses in the community, that your Christie Digitals, your Electronic Arts, and even your Vidyards, that content creation, content creators are in demand and in need in our community. And we are falling behind. So we have two choices at this point. And like I said, it's an investment. It's an investment that might pay off. It might not. That's council's decision to make. But we either step in or we don't. We try at this or we don't. I think it's a measured approach coming in with a pilot. I think it's something that we can try, and I've been clear before that I do think that we eventually need to bring in our fellow municipalities into this to have a more comprehensive vision and a package for the rest of the world when it comes to this stuff. But I do think it's an important first step, and I will support it. Councillor Anitis.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I have good news for our residents. We are looking at infrastructure. We are looking at all the issues that we have concerns. So I don't think that is the way that we should be going. There is a community here that has various needs that we need to look at. I've heard concerns about business case. Well, when I look at pages 710, 711, and 712 about media, hundreds of millions of dollars here waiting for us to grab. I don't know if that's pretty good market research if I ever seen it. We look at the consultation and all that in the last, since 2012 to 2017, over 30 events. And this is probably not even including the studies that we've commissioned or have done, like the web report and everything else. I think the job is going to create a business case, but we've done a phenomenal amount of research. I'm extremely pleased to finally see this here. You know, it's been literally almost 7 years of collaborating and studying after study and networking and involving the local artists, high-profile industry leaders, like, for example, from Hollywood to the OMDC to Austin, Texas. I was beginning to really think that this wasn't going to actually happen, and I kind of lost faith that we weren't going to move in this direction. And what really started out with a really big bang with Music Works and us being leaders and earning the praises of Music Canada and et cetera, that we end up, falling behind and watching other communities beat us to the media opportunities and the exposures and the jobs. It was really tough to see. What is really incredibly frustrating is not many communities have the special sauce like we do here in Kitchener, more importantly, Waterloo region. And again, I agree, this is a regional issue that I think should be looked at. We'll pilot, and this collaboration list here is quite amazing. I'm glad Mr. Murray is here to see this. I'm glad he's here. Communities like New Orleans to Baton Rouge, to Savannah, Georgia, to local areas such as Sudbury, Hamilton, London in regards to music, which in fact took one of our local talent away in Corey Crossman. So there's our talent attraction gone. With our assets, we can rival any of them if we all partner together and planned and invested. What I can say is we learned a valuable lesson here, and it rings so true. If us as a community, if we don't keep on innovating and investing to be leaders, whether it is in tech or just plain farming, we will fall behind quickly. But we and city staff, have persevered. The opportunity has never been right for us and eventually, as a region, we can and will be successful. With the provincial credits that we have and our weak dollar, collaborating with Toronto, and because they are busting at the seams with studio space, they don't even have studio space. Our community can have assets that is well positioned to lead the pack along with Toronto. Ontario as a whole generated $1.7 billion in the province just in film alone. If we can just get 5% of that, and just 5%, that's $85 million, which to me is an incredible, modest goal that we can create a new diversified economic spoke in our economic wheel here in this region and Kitchener. To me, that's pretty significant. Just in music festivals alone, since being first elected 7.5 years ago, using the TREM model, this community has probably close to seen over $50 million contributed to this community. That's big dollars. This should be praised, and we should figure out ways how to leverage that. Our consultations have helped establish local TV productions that have created jobs and honed their craft with Bell Media Investment. As Duncan in here is, that's who with Kitchener Sink. It's created jobs, it's helping them hone their craft. Are we throwing those dollars away? I don't think so. That's an investment. We need to do more than that. We need to support them locally. We've accomplished a lot of things without really having a plan or funding. Having a skeleton staff do the work. Imagine what we can accomplish if we had a community that was pounding the pavement, a team that was pounding the pavement, pushing for business for our community to bring these dollars to our community and help create the content. I recall a few years back when we had the opportunity and hosted the OMDC Ontario Media Development Corporation, which is the lead organization that hands out the tax credits. They had no idea about us. For this industry to grow organically, yes, it'll grow organically, but for it to really be sustainable, we need to have a bigger vision. And you know what? They were blown away by what we had in this community. Blown away. Along with Interactive Ontario. If we had an individual fighting for these dollars for our local artists and getting in the face often with the OMDC, the money will come here. I see this as no different than us as a city and a community fighting the federal government or the provincial government for infrastructure dollars, for parks and etc. This is the same thing. We're just sitting here on the sidelines and not getting this money for our community. I think we're being foolish.
Councillor Addis, your time is long expired.
I'm almost done. I think we're really blowing our opportunity here, and it's a huge opportunity. And why? To me, that's mind-blowing.
Thank you. With that, as requested by Councillor Cozzolo, recorded vote. Those in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the final item. We have, let's see, sorry. Staff presentation, we have 2 delegations as well. Well, yeah, technically 2 delegations for this, the next item. And I believe Ms. Miller will be kicking us off. Mr. May? Oh, pardon me.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be to hear from the regional delegation as context to the report, and then I can provide some opening comments after that, and then we can get into the conversation.
Not a problem. I do have, yep, very good. Mr. Murray from the region to... Mr. Murray, I don't recall you making a presentation recently, so welcome back.
Yep, thank you. And Mr. Chair and Mr. Mayor and councillors and city staff, thanks for giving regional staff an opportunity to come and speak with you today. The focus over the last number of months and today's your staff report and today's discussion is on supervised injection services, but what regional staff wanted to do was provide a little bit broader context today. And so our Associate Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Wong, is going to do the first part of the presentation, which gives you a bit of a context about the opioid issues that we're dealing with and the comprehensive approach to a response plan that this whole community is engaged in. And I think that's important context for the next part of the presentation, which Karen Quigley-Hobbs, our Director of Infectious Disease, Dental and Sexual Health, will do, which focuses on supervised injection services. But it's, I think, really important to keep in mind that the supervised injection services is just one part of a much broader comprehensive response that is going on in this community. It's an important part, but it's just one part. So Dr. Wong will do the first part of the presentation, Karen Quigley-Hobbs will do the second part, and we'll look forward to Council's discussion.
Very good, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hopefully this works. Good afternoon, Chair, councillors, staff, and members of the public. Karen and I would like to thank you for the invitation to speak and provide an opioid update. Through our presentation, we will provide, firstly, as Mike mentioned, context regarding our region's integrated drug strategy and its approach to the opioid situation. We will also provide a high-level summary of the findings of Phase 1 of our Supervised Injection Services Feasibility Study and our planned next steps. Just a few words to begin regarding drug addiction. So drug addiction is a complicated and chronic condition. People struggling with addiction to substances often are unable to stop, despite knowing the impact the drug has on them, their families, and their communities. Many people who are addicted have experiences of childhood trauma, including abuse or neglect, struggle with mental health, or become dependent on a drug as a result of an injury. Drug addiction does not affect just the individual, but has significant impacts on families, neighborhoods, and the healthcare system as a whole. In Waterloo Region, there is a community collaborative called the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy. Its vision is to make Waterloo Region safer and healthier. Its mission is to prevent, reduce, or eliminate problematic substance use and its consequences. As you can see on this slide, there are many partners working together as part of this strategy. They span the spectrum of work across various facets of the opioid response, which are organized into 4 major pillars of work, which I'll talk about a little later. So, for example, we see the school boards, the LHIN, many service agencies, police, Crime Prevention Council, municipalities, and people with lived experience. So this slide describes the 4 pillars, their focus, and some examples of activities. First, prevention. The goal of prevention is to prevent or delay the onset of substance use. Often this work is about addressing the root causes of substance use and includes activities that aim to build resiliency in youth and enhance curriculum. Second, harm reduction. The goal of harm reduction is to reduce harms associated with drug use, encourage safer drug use practices, and support people who are struggling with addiction. Examples of strategies include needle syringe programs, overdose prevention training, naloxone distribution, and now exploring the feasibility of supervised injection services. Third, rehabilitation and recovery. The goal of this pillar is to enhance and increase addiction treatment. Activities include advocating for more treatment options, reducing wait times, and expanding the type of treatment available. Most recently, this pillar has led the work to implement the Rapid Access Addiction Clinics, which will be coming to Kitchener and Cambridge. Fourth, justice and enforcement. The justice and enforcement pillar aims to enhance police services related to drug use. This work has included education of officers related to the Good Samaritan Act, exploring diversion programs such as drug treatment court, and, of course, a focus on drug trafficking. So this slide is just to quickly mention that the four-pillar approach, which you just heard about, is an evidence-based approach and one that the Government of Canada is using for the opioid situation. Now I'd like to mention a few words about the mandate that has been given from the province to public health units. So, among the work of many partners working on this issue, Public Health has been given a mandate from the Ministry of Health to ensure access to harm reduction programs. So programming in one of those four pillars that I mentioned earlier, harm reduction. We have been tasked to collaborate with healthcare partners and other relevant partners to ensure access to these programs, which represent, as I mentioned, one of the four pillars of a comprehensive response. Special Committee on Opioids. So last year, public health units received further direction from the ministry to coordinate the development of local response plans to the opioid situation. As we saw, a lot of work was already happening with a lot of partners involved in the four different pillars. In order to build upon this existing work, to ensure good collaboration and coordination across the four pillars, and to continue to advance strategies that address this complex issue, the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy, supported by Public Health, has struck a special committee on opioid response. The special committee is composed of leadership from key sectors involved in all four pillars, such as Region of Waterloo Police Services, the local Integration Health Network, the two main school boards, and municipal CAOs. It will oversee the development of a coordinated opioid response plan for Waterloo Region based on the four pillars. A little more contextual information on harm reduction as part of broader provincial and federal policy. Federal policy. So, to combat the opioid crisis, the Government of Canada has stated that it supports harm reduction measures as part of a comprehensive approach, that supervised consumption sites are an important harm reduction measure, and that international and Canadian evidence has shown that when properly established and maintained, supervised consumption sites save lives without increasing drug use or crime in the surrounding area. So in the interest of time, I'll just briefly mention that that policy is also supported by the Ontario Ministry of Health for the same reasons. In Waterloo Region, supervised injection services are being explored as an addition to other harm reduction services that are available. This service would target areas already impacted by drug use and would aim to reach people who tend to be long-term injection users and the most marginalized from a healthcare and social inclusion perspective. Alone, supervised injection services will not solve all issues of substance use and addiction in Waterloo Region, but are an important tool in the toolbox to more immediately address overdose deaths, while we continue to work on other pillars such as treatment and prevention. The next slides will present highlights of findings from the first phase of Waterloo Region Supervised Injection Services feasibility study. The purpose of Phase 1 was to assess whether there would be a need for such services in our region and to gather broad community input about the perceived benefits and concerns related to establishing supervised injection services in Waterloo Region. Karen Quigley-Hobbs will now speak to those findings and propose next steps.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, councillors. Region of Waterloo Public Health, in consultation with community partners, undertook a multi-pronged research study to determine the feasibility of supervised injection services for Waterloo Region. And the study included a review of secondary data sources that were related to opioid use in the region, in-person surveys with people with lived-in experience of injection drug use, key informant interviews with harm reduction service providers, information and consultation or focus group sessions with groups interested in the opioid response for Waterloo Region, and as well an online survey to gather public input. So in Waterloo Region, we know that overdose is on the rise. Naloxone, which is the substance that can be used to temporarily reverse an opioid overdose. Last year, we saw a significant jump in the number of naloxone kits distributed from 677 in 2016 to 4,703 in 2017. There were 38 confirmed opioid-related deaths in 2016, compared to 71 suspected overdose fatalities in 2017. A similar trend was noticed with call data with paramedic services, showing a 304% increase in overdose-related calls since 2015. And in 2017, there were 795 overdose-related calls. By examining the number of unique clients who access needle syringe program services in Waterloo Region, we were able to estimate that just under 4,000 people in the region inject drugs. While this is our best estimate, we know it is a slight underestimation, as not all people who inject drugs use needle syringe programs. Findings from the supervised injection survey indicate from people who use substances, almost half of those people who inject drugs inject every day. Drug injecting is happening mainly in Central Kitchener and South Cambridge. 4 out of every 5 people are injecting alone, which is a risk for fatal overdose. 87% said they would or might use a supervised injection service. And people believe that supervised injection services will decrease public drug use, prevent overdoses, and reduce bloodborne infection. Consultations sessions with other focus groups and the public survey indicated as well people were worried that a supervised injection services may impact property values and affect safety, specifically related to drug trafficking and other crime. The first map shows overdose calls by location of the call. We can see that paramedic services calls are received from across Waterloo Region, and the more calls are received from Central Kitchener, Central South Kitchener, and South Cambridge. The second map shows the total number of emergency room visits by the patient's place of residence. In this map, we can see that people who overdose live in all parts of the region, but live mainly in Central Kitchener, Central South Kitchener, and South Cambridge. In terms of the model of health service, it was indicated in the survey that wraparound supports were of great importance. In Ontario, supervised injection services must be integrated with other harm reduction services as opposed to being standalone sites. They must include at a minimum first aid, education on safer injection, provision and disposal of injection supplies, naloxone distribution, and referral to other health and social services. The need for service integration was emphasized among all study participants. Most notably, 83% of people who inject drugs said they wanted referral to drug treatment, rehab, and other treatment services for when they were ready to use them. Participants in the study highlighted the importance of making services easy to get to, and having an accessible location would ensure the service would be used. That said, it was also felt if only one site was created for Waterloo Region, it may lead to a concentration of services in one community. Central Kitchener and South Cambridge emerged as being the most important places to have a supervised injection service, and it was felt that they should be integrated with other services and run by a reputable and trusted agency such as a healthcare organization. Service providers surveyed emphasized that a location can serve as an entry into health services for people who otherwise have limited access to healthcare due to stigma and mistrust. We asked about strategies that would help mitigate the concerns raised. People were looking for more communication about supervised injection services along with mental health, addiction, and harm reduction overall. For some people, this consultation process served as an introduction to the concepts related to harm reduction and strategies to address problematic substance use and its consequences. There was strong interest in continuing to be engaged in that conversation. To mitigate concerns, people also recommended creating a community advisory group to oversee implementation of any supervised injection services and to play a role in mitigation. In terms of service models, fixed supervised injection service locations are supported by the findings of the study and can provide a platform for enhanced support. Fixed locations can best provide an integrated wraparound service model, as well as provide a level of anonymity in that people are not aware which service is being accessed, whereas mobile services can be stigmatizing for those accessing them. For these reasons, mobile services alone are not recommended for our community service, but may be explored as a supplement to fixed sites, where potential benefits of this mode of service may outweigh its disadvantages. Temporary sites or overdose prevention services provide an expedited response to address overdose fatalities for communities with greatest need. They are intended to be temporary measures with approvals for 3 to 6 months that are focused on supervised drug consumption and are not funded to provide additional supports or services beyond naloxone training and distribution. Some communities have used these services to provide an immediate response to overdoses while supervised injection services studies are being completed. They are not intended to be a replacement for supervised injection services. Treatment services would be integrated into the service model. Through the feasibility study, most people who inject drugs wanted access to treatment as part of the supervised injection services. Okay, we're not coming up with the next one here. The next slide, there we go. Based on the findings of Phase 1 of the feasibility study, including the recent public input at 2 special community services committee meetings of Regional Council, and official correspondence and reports from the cities of Kitchener and of Cambridge, regional staff will be presenting the following recommendations to Regional Council tomorrow on April 10th. So further pursue supervised injection services in Waterloo Region as an intervention to prevent fatal overdoses. Further pursue supervised injection services that are integrated with other services, which at a minimum will include mandatory components of the provincial program, but will also include basic health care and access to treatment. Pursue up to 3 supervised injection services in Waterloo Region as a starting point to support access for people who inject drugs. to work with health service partners, staff from the 3 cities, and other stakeholders to identify potential site locations that meet requirements for federal approval and provincial funding, and to the extent possible, address the concerns raised during Phase 1 consultation, and endorse the plan to initiate Phase 2 of the Waterloo Region Supervised Injection Services feasibility study as described in the next 2 slides. So in terms of Phase 2, if we receive approval tomorrow from Regional Council, staff would work with health service partners, staff from the 3 cities, and other stakeholders, specifically healthcare service partners, to identify potential site locations that meet requirements of for federal approval and provincial funding, and to the extent possible, address concerns raised during the Phase 1 consultation process. As part of this process, staff would also work with health service partners to identify the proposed operating model for any potential sites. An update report to Community Services Committee would go forward on the candidate locations, operating model, and plan for further community consultation. We have a target of May 2018 for this. And then as well to consult extensively using a variety of methods with community, which would include residents as well as business owners, from the areas surrounding the candidate locations to identify concerns and develop mitigation strategies. And finally, the report to Community Services on the results of the consultation and mitigation strategies would go forward, and if appropriate, based on the evaluation and consultation, provide recommendations about proceeding with applications for up to 3 possible supervised injection sites in the region. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kylie, for your presentation. Mr. May, do you want to make some comments before we get into questions?
Yep. Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, I think I'll just make a few comments from City of Kitchener staff's perspective, and then if councillors could identify if their questions are for regional staff or city staff, it might just help because we have a number of city staff also here available to respond. So the staff report before you today provides several specific recommendations that City of Kitchener staff believe will be appropriate to request of the Region of Waterloo if the decision to proceed with establishing supervised injection sites is made. It's important to note that the report before you does not take a position on whether or not supervised injection sites should be established in Kitchener, given that the mandate for public health and for social services rests with the Region of Waterloo. And while staff's report touches upon 5 broad areas that Council should consider today, I do want to touch briefly on the first recommendation, which stresses what city staff believe is a critical point, and that is the need for the Region of Waterloo to take an ongoing role in the operations of any sites if the decision is made to establish these services. We believe that in order to be successful, the region needs to play a strong leadership role, an ongoing leadership role, and to be clear, it's our understanding that you do not have to be a municipality in order to apply for and offer these services. Other agencies in our community could do so. What City of Kitchener staff are saying is it should be the region who applies for the license. It should be the region who provides dedicated expert staff to offer these services. And where possible, they should be located in buildings where there are a variety, a suite of other social supports available to the users. We also believe that it is important to take a fair and balanced approach to where these sites might be located in the region, with the distribution of potential sites in each of the region's 3 main municipalities, as all 3 are experiencing challenges with the opioid use. So with that, certainly open to questions. We have several city staff here, and regional staff are also available for questions.
Very good, and thank you. We have 2 people in the queue at the moment. At the risk of repeating some of Mr. May's comments, I would point out that there could be, we could ask questions about this all day. So I really want to hone in on our jurisdiction. Our input here isn't whether to do this or not. That is the decision, the jurisdictional decision of the regional government, not ours. Our job here is to determine if they do it, what's the best way to implement it, okay? So I would ask you kindly to, we are actually running a bit late in terms of time as well, I'd ask you kindly to focus your questions towards that. And with that, Councillor Yaneski, you're first in the queue.
Thank you for your presentation on a very important topic here that is quite serious in our community. I did read the report. There's a lot to digest through that reading and appreciating the concerns that we have. Just to understand where we are today, just maybe go back a bit. How bad was the issue? How bad is it today versus how bad was it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Is this getting out of control? Is it something that we can control? Is this like being done illegally by the drug industry, or can we do something about it with policing? I know that's another sort of topic, but we're trying to address where we're headed. And is it going to get worse in the future? Sort of an open question there.
Want me to start? So this has evolved over the last number of years. Certainly there has always been, and likely always will be, a level of illicit drug use in the community. That being said, this has been enhanced by a couple of major variables. One being the prescribing habits of opioids for citizens trying to manage pain. Initially, those substances were thought to be non-addictive. As time has gone on, we have discovered that indeed there is a high level of an ability to become addicted to those, so that's contributed. As well, the illicit drug market has become contaminated over the last couple of years with drugs such as fentanyl and carfentanil, which are two of the highest risk contaminations of the illicit drug market. The issue being that people don't know often that those substances are there, and they may be in a level that is fatal. And so those two variables combined have resulted in a very, very serious drug situation, not only across Canada, but also across North America.
Well, I appreciate your answer, and that's fine. I understand the concerns that you have. I mean, I get pain as well here, so I go to my medical doctor and I get a prescription, or I go get Tylenol or whatever, and eventually the pain goes away. I mean, and that's sort of a legalized way of doing it. Do these people not have access to medical accessibility to doctors, medical clinics, or anything like that to help them, as opposed to getting it illegally?
I think what we've seen, and Dr. Wong can add in here, is that the system has been struggling with the right level of pain management support for patients. And often when they come to the end of their time period that would be suggested for opioid management, a lot of people are struggling with chronic pain. And in those circumstances, they're often left with not a lot of alternatives other than the illegal drug market.
And just to add, so what's changed in the illegal drug market has been the addition of these very powerful contaminants that are often not produced legally. They're called bootleg contaminants. So fentanyl, for example, which is 100 times more strong than morphine. So you have this contamination of the illegal supply with products like fentanyl, which render the legal supply a lot more deadly when people take it.
So to maybe address this issue, you're suggesting supervised injection sites, three locations that you've sort of pointed out in general. So what we're trying to do is to bring these people who've got these issues to these sites so they can inject those drugs and do them in a sort of a safe area. Are we not abetting crime in terms of allowing them to use illegal drugs in a public facility?
So this is the premise of harm reduction services, with the priority being to ensure that people stay alive so that they're able to look at options for treatment down the road. That's one of the critical pieces of the information that came back in the feasibility study, but from both people who use substances and from the general public as well, was that we wanted to ensure that these services provide options for treatment. And harm reduction is really just a way of keeping them safe and alive until they can move on to receive further support and treatment.
Okay, Councillor Oneski, your time's expired.
Time is up.
Yeah, with respect, each of your questions was focused in on, again, whether to do this or not, and again, that's the regional decision, whereas the questions I'm really hoping are going to focus more on if the regional government makes that decision, what's the best way to implement it, okay? So we still have a lot of people in the queue. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, one thing I wanted to clarify, and that is to say, in all due respect, it's fine for you to say that this is a regional issue. I wanted clarification on, first of all, I wanted to ask regional staff in general whether they have read these 5 points in our report and whether they agree with those 5 points. Because I don't want to split them up and take a lot of time, but I just want a clarification on whether you agree with those 5 points or whether you have problems with them.
So if I could, Mr. Chair, so I think regional staff and Kitchener staff have had lots of discussion about these 5 points, about all the issues related to supervised injection services. So I'm not sure it's a matter of, do we agree or disagree. I think, we respect the points that city staff are making. I know that regional council is interested in Kitchener City Council's input. And I think what you'll see as you look through both the regional staff report and the city staff report is there are a lot of criteria and constraints to deal with. There's who operates the facility, there's how do we provide wraparound services, there's physically where is it located. So there are a lot of constraints and criteria that should regional council decide to go forward with the next step, I think my colleagues on regional staff and city staff are going to have a lot of work to do to look at all of these criteria and all these constraints and try to find appropriate facilities and appropriate locations. So I think this is helpful input. I think it makes it clear what the city's concerns are should regional council decide to go forward.
I think, and I just want to add to that, that it is helpful input, and I agree completely with what it says. But based on what you're saying and based on what I hear outside of this room, it gives you lots of room to avoid doing what we're asking you to do.
Well, I think, as I said, there are a lot. It may well be not possible to move forward and satisfy all the criteria and all the constraints that City of Kitchener, City of Cambridge, other stakeholders are putting forward. So we may get to a point where we need to bring recommendations to regional council that say, we're able to satisfy 80 or 90% of the input from a variety of groups, and here's the input that we've not been able to satisfy.
But obviously we don't have the health and social services that you have at the region. You have two very competent ones standing next to you. We don't have those services, so it is up to you to do that. Do you not think?
Well, and I think, truly, it's been a partnership, and I think it will continue to be a partnership. I know that city staff and regional staff are working really closely together. Mr. Chapman is on the special committee on opioid response. So I think at various levels, I think the teams are working really closely together, as we need to.
Thank you. Did I hear correctly, I'm running out of time, but did I hear correctly that you're going to have a site in Kitchener by next month? May?
No.
Someone mentioned May.
No, I think what the May, we will need, should Regional Council decide to go forward with the next phase of work, our goal would be to report back to Regions Community Services Committee in May about potential locations. And then there would need to be additional consultation, public engagement following that. But I think if I could, the regional staff are truly trying to strike a fine balance here between moving forward expeditiously and yet taking enough time to, engage the communities, engage stakeholders. And it is a really kind of fine and tricky balance we're trying to strike.
And I'm glad to hear that, but do your regional officials, do you already have sites in mind in Kitchener?
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you to all of you for bringing this important issue to us and giving us the information that's really rather very informative. I guess one of the things that I've been hearing among the public in the discussion is in regards to having fixed sites to mobile sites, and I guess the argument that I've been hearing is with the fixed sites that it would have a negative impact on their neighborhoods. So I'm just want to grasp a little bit on how can you alleviate that situation with their concerns.
So that in part speaks to the work that we will need to do with candidate locations and the members of that particular surrounding neighborhood to identify what their perception of risk may be, and then to identify mitigation strategies to address those. As well, I think a critical suggestion that came out of the feasibility study was to have a community-based implementation committee. If and when we do get to the point of implementing a supervised injection service, there would be a community-based committee to support that implementation and evaluation on an ongoing basis. In addition, part of the federal exemption process, if we were to be granted a federal exemption, you need to go back and after a year and apply again for support to that exemption. So it automatically has a one-year evaluation component built into it.
Okay, so in other words, the funding is that there's not a more complete funding model with the mobile site. So rather, it's being determined by the federal funding and all that stuff, or provincial funding, to be more funding towards fixed sites. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not necessarily. It's based on community need. So what we are finding from the feasibility study and subsequent public input sessions is that there seems to be more support both among people who use substances and surrounding neighborhoods for a fixed site, because it can be blended more easily with treatment and primary care. So that we have the wraparound services, if you will. That's harder to do on a mobile basis, because just by the sheer amount of room you would need to do that. There's also some inherent challenges with mobile sites, such as where do they go, how often do they go. There's as well. There's not the ability for people to line up outside or inside, so there's lining up outside that's occurred, and it's quite obvious that that's what people are going for. So one of the struggles that people who use substances manage on a daily basis is a fair amount of stigma, and it's what keeps them away often from more traditional health services.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, thank you for your information. Will it be possible for us to get a copy of your PowerPoint? Yeah, there seem to be a lot of questions as to who should take responsibility for this. I just assume that it would be the region. So is there a lot of questioning going on about this? It's one of the decisions we're asked to make, but who else would look after this if it weren't regional?
So there's a variety of models in Toronto. In fact, we visited a site in Toronto that was operated by the South Riverdale Community Health Centre. So in other communities, there are models where community health centers operate them, other not-for-profit organizations operate them. Toronto Public Health operates one directly. So it could be operated by public health, it could be operated by other organizations. And the way the province has set up the funding model, the way they've set up these temporary sites, essentially they would consider applications from any organization, either regional public health or other community organizations.
Are we familiar with any organizations in our region that are capable of doing this?
Yes, so we work regularly with a number of partners. I think that what we hear from our partners is it would be best to do it in a collaborative way. So there are a number of agencies that do have experience working with certain portions of the population, but in order to get a full set of wraparound services, everyone's got a bit of a different piece of the pie, if you will. So it would be better to have a combination because then you actually get the best out of all of that combined.
Will all the funding for this come from the senior levels of government, or will some of it be dependent on the local taxpayer?
This right now would all come from the provincial government. So the exemption comes from the federal government, the funding comes from the provincial government.
The exemption that you speak of, what is an exemption for what?
It's exemption to the basically drug enforcement legislation.
Okay. We're through a quarter of this year. What do our numbers look like for the first quarter of this year?
So what we've seen in the last few years and continuing in the first part of this year is we're continuing to see increases in the number of overdose calls, in the number of emergency department visits related to opioid overdoses. And the data with respect to deaths always lags a little bit, so we don't have any data with respect to that yet. But I think based on the trends of the last 3 years where we've seen continual and significant growth, I suspect that we'll continue to see increases in 2018.
Okay, undoubtedly we're going to have to go in this direction in the future. Is there a scenario, when do you see a site actually being available? What kind of timing are we looking at? Every day that goes by, it's another problem.
I guess the other piece of information that's important for council to understand is there's really two streams, if you will, for funding. The province has received an exemption from the federal government to implement temporary sites with a 3 to 6 month approval. That does not need to go through this extensive consultation process. That's an application that can be made by a health service agency and go directly to the provincial government for approval. They do commit to providing notification to the municipality where that service would open, and I believe there would be 4 days for municipal comment on that. That's one stream. The stream that we are working on right now are for permanent sites. So in terms of how long it would take to get to up and going, as you say, the sooner the better. Realistically, we're probably looking at a number of months before we could actually be up and open.
I was trying to pin you down as professionals. You know what you're talking about. But from what you're saying, you would expect it before the end of this year that we'll have some answers to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to hear that you are talking about connecting and partnering with agencies that are already dealing with harm reduction and people who are dealing with drug use. And you've answered my question sort of regarding up and running. Do you believe that once we have a number of sites identified, that we will have to engage in additional policing and what the costs around that might be?
We'll definitely be working with the police who are supportive of safe injection sites and who want to make sure that there's a balance between enforcing the law, ensuring that there isn't drug trafficking, for example, around these sites, but at the same time not having such a heavy police presence, so to speak, as to discourage people who would need to go to these services from going. So they're sensitive to the need to ensure that there's a balance, and they are very much wanting to work with us in the model for service and how police can support such a service.
And I think that's what I was reading too, is that it is a delicate balance between harm prevention and I think people who live in an area where one of these sites could be located would feel a little bit more comfortable if they saw more police presence, but then we also want to make sure that we're not jeopardizing the ability for the people who use these sites. So you talked about Toronto Public Health having a site, and that you had visited that site. Have they been able to assess whether they've seen a reduction in the harm, in harm reduction in overdoses, having a site like that?
Yes, in addition to the Toronto Public Health site and the South Riverdale Community Health Services site that we visited in Toronto, staff have also been in communication with other sites, as well as myself have visited a number of other sites in Ontario and one in Montreal. And in general, what we see is these sites are very actively used. They have good uptake. Initially, it might not be as many numbers as you'll see a little later on, a few months later, but once they're up and running for a few months, they have good numbers of people, and they've been able to do a number of interventions in order to prevent people from going into overdose or reviving them. Now, one of the challenges in looking just at the number of overdoses and whether or not that has gone down in the community is the fact that in the background the risk for overdose is increasing. So I don't have the statistics from the other cities, but I do know in conversations with them, they have indicated to us that their numbers are showing that they are definitely having an impact in terms of being able to intervene and prevent overdoses, but there still continues to be a number of overdoses due to the background situation of overdoses rising.
Okay. It's good that we're looking within our own, boundaries, but internationally, there's been some unique ways of dealing with this. Have we looked at what other countries are doing and how they've been successful either with safe injection sites or needle disposal or, the various components to all of this?
Yes, we have done some extensive literature review, both in Canada and also abroad, because as you say, in Europe, there are a number of countries that have used a variety of harm reduction services for decades. Right now, in terms of the overdose crisis, the risk seems to be somewhat higher in the area of North America than Europe. That's not to say that might not change, but we certainly would take the learnings that are available from those sites and build them into our process.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing some very concerning news to us, and I know that this is going to be a difficult road to get to where we're actually going to do this, but I do think we need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Most of my questions have been answered. I just have a few more. So one is just regarding the key point that in my mind is the leadership role of the region. So even if a different provider were to apply to the province, should the region give the green light to have a safe ejection site, what level of ownership would the region be able to maintain, perhaps in an evaluation role?
So both with the federal exemption application and provincial funding application, they've got significant requirements for monitoring and evaluation. So the operator of the facility is going to be required to do monitoring and evaluation, and public health, and Karen and Shirley talked about public health's role in ensuring harm reduction activities happen. And so public health regularly engages in monitoring and evaluation of harm reduction activities. So I'm sure that public health will continue to do that. And in addition, whoever's operating the facility, whether it's public health or another operator, is going to have to do significant monitoring and evaluation.
And will that monitoring and evaluation include the feedback from the surrounding community, the neighborhood impacted by the site?
Yes, most definitely. And I think that that's another value add to having that community-based advisory committee, both for implementation and evaluation. Right. They will have a connectedness with the community that perhaps the service providers wouldn't have at the outset. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so apart from ensuring harm reduction activities are taking place, which I assume would be the bare minimum of evaluation criteria, how can we ensure best practices? I mean, it seems that the region has really taken a lot of care in doing this feasibility study, and I'm just wondering what level of attention will be put to ensuring best practices throughout the next phases?
Okay, if you could just hold off for 1 second. Mr. Chapman, do you want to add to the last comment?
Sure. Through the Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just to clarify a point, Councillor Marsh framed her question along the lines of if the region decided that these sites were required, but another operator came forward to make an application. The question presumed that regional council would decide yes, and then someone would apply for a license. My understanding is that even if regional council decides that in their view a service is not required, it doesn't preclude a private operator from applying for temporary or permanent sites.
That's right.
And my understanding is that the region has done this work basically because establishing the community need is a requirement for any application. Essentially, the region's first report established the community need, notwithstanding what the decision will be. And so I think it's helpful if regional staff can clarify that process, because I wouldn't want the public to be left with the understanding that if regional council says no, that means that there will not be these services within the community.
Okay, gotcha. So then, regardless of council's direction, regional council's direction, should a site exist, I guess what my concern would be is the next phase and the extent to which regional staff would be involved.
And I think it's safe to say we have operated as a collaborative. Public health has, as Mr. Murray mentioned, we have a provincial mandate for harm reduction. So we would remain involved in one way, shape, or form supporting the facility, such as we have done with the feasibility study. So whether or not we were to have whether or not we were putting in the application with our partners or whether we were in more of a support role, by virtue of that mandate, we would stay involved.
And most often, our community partners will look to us for things like evidence regarding best practices, and so we would expect that in working with the traditional partners that we've been working with, we would continue to play that role.
Okay, sounds good. I really think, and thank you, Mr. Chapman, for clarifying that point. I think it's important, but I also think that we, at least from my perspective, I think it's important to drive home the point that we appreciated the leadership to this point that the region has taken, And regardless of who owns or leads the next step, I think it's still key that the region maintain that level of commitment to making sure that it's done right, and that that the concerns that have been raised through this extensive consultation are addressed regardless of who, again, who leads it. So those are my main points.
Thank you. Mayor Verbenovich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'm not looking to ask any questions, but at the appropriate time would like to move the recommendation and speak to it.
Very good. And lastly, Councillor Etherington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to move it as well, so I just had a few more questions. Maybe to Mr. Murray again, sorry about that. Are you considering a regional government site for the Kitchener SIS facility? Are you, or would you?
Sorry, I'm not sure I caught what you said.
Are you or would you consider a regional building as a site for an SIS facility?
So I think at this point, we're not ruling any options out, or as I said earlier, we don't have any specific sites or locations in mind, but I think, we're not ruling anything out. And I think we're going to have to approach it with a pretty open mind if we're going to try to deal with all the constraints and criteria that people are putting forward.
You'd make a great politician, Mr. Murray.
I'll leave that to all of you.
My next question, does anyone have any idea of what the cost of a fixed site might be? Have you priced them elsewhere when one is up and running?
I think that it rather depends on how you're approaching the project, if you will. If you are renovating, so there's two types of funding. There would be the operational funding plus the capital. So if you're starting from scratch, the capital investment could be quite significant. And it could be upwards up to hundreds of thousands to $1 million. That being said, if you're renovating an existing site, your funding requirements or requests may be somewhat different. In terms of operations, again, it would depend on the projected hours of operation that you are hoping to offer, as well as the size of the population. And that would certainly be a consideration of the province in terms of their funding of operating dollars.
Right. And my last question, and maybe this would even be to Mr. May. Could you remind us that people are shooting up right now in community centers, public washrooms, parks? So people who are concerned about the word that's always used, enabling, in way of a SIS facility, that we already have that problem. Is that correct, Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's absolutely correct that this is happening in city facilities already.
Thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions. It's been moved by Mayor Verbenovich. Oh, okay, it's been moved by Councillor Etherington. No problem there. You'll have your chance at the region, Mr. Mayor. And comments, Mayor Verbenovich.
Yeah, I will, however, speak to this, and I want to both thank regional staff who have done really yo-person's service on this issue on behalf of our entire region, because it is a difficult issue. It's one that's not easy to understand for the average citizen, and it's difficult enough for members of council. It's not an issue that will magically solve this problem and make it go away, but it's one piece of a puzzle towards addressing a critical healthcare issue, not only facing our community, but in fact facing communities across Canada. And it is fair to say that this is a crisis, and one that cities have been working with the federal and provincial government across Canada on for the past number of months. And just today, in fact, while I was participating in a session on cities and mental health in Toronto, part of Mayor Gregor Robertson from Vancouver's focus was on the correlation between mental health and addictions. And he pointed out that the overall number of opioid deaths across our country are greater than the number of people dying from Parkinson's disease, greater than the number of people dying from car accidents, and a whole list of other medical ailments. So it gives you a sense of the scope of this issue, and that this issue is not about what sometimes people think, is, some person living on the street. Sure, that might be part of the circumstances, but the reality is the current opioid crisis that we're dealing with is impacting families from all walks of life across our city. I've had a mother come in here to talk to me who lost her 14-year-old child. The child was experimenting, admittedly, with marijuana. The marijuana was laced with fentanyl, unbeknownst to the child. The child overdosed and died. There are construction workers in this city who were on opioids as part of their medical treatment for a workplace injury, got addicted to the stuff. When their doctors cut them off, they now turn to street drugs and are dealing with these kinds of addictions. So that, I think, helps all of us put this into a certain amount of scope. I also want to thank our staff for their diligence in looking at this issue and looking at it in the context of what does it mean for the City of Kitchener so that we can provide meaningful input into the regional government's decision-making process on this. And I think they've been very effective in terms of making recommendations that are relevant to that and that we believe are key in terms of dealing with an issue that does have mixed opinions in the community around it, speaks to the fact that as a community we've always recognized that we can't bury our head and hope that these issues are going to go away, because they don't, and that we need to be proactive and deal with them, and I think strikes to find that right balance. And I think that balance includes the importance of the leadership role of the region, just like, regional public health plays a leadership role on school vaccinations for kids. There's certainly a compelling argument that can be made about why it's important for them, at least in the initial couple years, to play a leadership role in terms of the operations of this, in collaboration with various community partners that are keen on being part of the solution. I think this notion of coming back after 2 years and looking at it very closely and seeing what we learned and do we need to make some tweaks is important. And lastly, of the three remaining points, I just want to touch on the importance of site selection criteria. I'm very pleased that we didn't get into that today, because we're not at that stage in the process. But the notion that it's incredibly imperative for the region to work with municipalities to be sensitive to various issues and concerns in making these site selection criteria is important. But unlike, quite frankly, one of our sister municipalities who has gone the route of saying, well, okay, maybe, but not here and not here and not here, we're not at that point yet. And I'm pleased that that's not in our report, because I think that's part of a broader conversation that needs to happen as part of phase 2. And I think collectively we can start making some positive inroads in this issue. And fundamentally, if going down this path results in even 1 or 2 fewer people dying, then we've made the right decision and we've gone in the right direction.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll try to make it fast. recognizing that the most suitable supervised site in Kitchener will probably be located in either my downtown ward or that of Councillor Marsh, I still support establishing a supervised injection facility in our core, our city core. And that should be a site that includes a variety of wraparound social and health services. I've seen those wraparound services work fantastically in other agencies to achieve results. I want to see our municipality and regional government respond in a positive way to help solve a worsening and tragic situation where 109 people have died in Waterloo region because of opioid-related overdoses in 2016 and 2017. In a region where we have, as you heard, 4,000 people, about 4,000, injecting drugs often laced with fentanyl, I want to ask this council to provide help for victims who could very easily be your child, your parent, or family member. And I want to be part of a solution where there has been a 303% increase in the number of opioid-related overdose calls to our overstressed paramedic services, along with a 70% jump in opioid-related emergency visits to local hospitals. Overdose calls are higher in Cambridge and Kitchener, but Waterloo also has similar issues. I don't want to see Kitchener mimic Cambridge Council by closing eyes tight and refusing to accept responsibility for such a huge growing issue. I also don't want to see Kitchener copy Waterloo by staying quiet on the subject and pretending the city does not have opioid abuse, addictions, and even homelessness. Regional statistics show us that 86% of those who inject drugs would use a supervised, safe self-injection site. Similar stats show that other cities that have SIS facilities report less needles and less drug equipment litter being found in local parks and facilities. They also report less injections done with dirty needles and greater use of drug treatment and health services. So, as a downtown councillor, I watched and worked with residents in the past 18 months who were alarmed at the location of methadone clinics established to help addicts in the downtown area. At first, they had many concerns, but I can report now that I have not had a single complaint call about those clinics in at least the past 18 months. So I would urge councillors to support this move toward a supervised injection facility. It's not easy, especially with an election coming on, and I would remind them again that we already have those problems, those suggested problems, such as site would cause. We already have the problems in our parks, community centres, public washrooms and other city facilities. So please take the progressive and right response to this growing tragedy by supporting a downtown supervised injection site. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. As I listen to my fellow councillors' questions and comments, I'm really proud of the concern, the compassion, the respect and dignity that's being given to those who are currently struggling with addiction. I believe this will really increase the potential for accessing health and social services and treatment programs while it decreases the potential for overdose. I really want to thank regional staff and our city staff for their sincere desire to want to help alleviate this crisis. I think the site-specific considerations will all be met, and with the right education and consultation, we as a community will all benefit from this.
Thank you kindly. Anything I could have said has been said better. I just would like to offer my thanks to staff as well in this work. So it's been moved by Councillor Etherington, and I think a recorded vote's in order. Thank you very much. A recorded vote's been called for. Voting is open. And that carries unanimously. And that convenes Finance and Corporate Services. We will meet back at, pardon me, Councillor Fernandez in the queue.
Yes, I wanted to know if we could bring the last item, the collaborative municipal funding of key cultural institutions. There's a summary. I just have one quick question. We can take it out of, I think it's just for information.
Okay, a motion is to take that item of information. Those in favor and opposed, that carries. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know that this has been really important to have us understand what our key cultural organizations require. We've done some work on that. There's still some to be done, but are we anticipating that we will see permanent funding as part of our budgets for these key cultural institutions in budgets coming forward in the future?
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, I may have to get some clarification on the question or just be able to provide. So in this past budget, we shifted the annual allotments that you provide these organizations into one consolidated budget within economic development. So that's already established and would be an ongoing item at budget time, that if you wanted to adjust that number, that would be your opportunity. So I'm not sure if that was what you were asking.
Yep, that's it. Great, thank you.
Okay, with that concludes Finance and Corporate Services. Thank you.